when Yvonne's got her machine going. Yeah. It is 7:30, so we will start. Welcome everyone. A bit depleted tonight on a summer evening. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillor Brown is away. Will you sit there?
We're happy with that. She's on holiday.
Again?
Borough Councillor Nick Burgess has a JTB meeting.
He does.
Yeah.
And that's it. Okay. Does anyone have any declarations of interest one way or another?
No.
I didn't spot any
No.
obvious ones. No. Good. So we don't need to consider any dispensations. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being recorded and it will be put on the internet, technology willing. So at this point I will open the public session, and Joe, I think you want to go first.
I didn't say I wanted to go first, I just said I needed to get away from my eggs, that's all. So I'll finish at 8. Okay, well I'll go first if you want to. Okay, I'll give you a brief update then. So we've had, so Lee and I have obviously worked together, which is the purpose of our roles. We've both spoken to residents who've had issues with their wing mirrors being broken. We've both advised those residents that they do need to report it and given them the correct method to report it. At this point we're unsure whether that's actually taken place or not, which is the usual frustration, but I think at least 3 or 4 separate vehicles were damaged. And I think it was over the space of 2 days as well. I know Lee has reported some fly tipping via Country Eye and the odd pothole. Oh yes, we've got the scam awareness which is taking place beginning of next month. So if that can be advertised far and wide, that would be fantastic. I've also...
Are you going to put that in Outlook, or do you need something
I
to
think
do
Yvonne's in
with
charge
that?
of
It's
that.
on you.
I put it in Outlook last month,
Yeah.
telling everybody because it's the 2nd, so it's early in the month.
Yeah.
But I will put it in again, and I'll put it on Nextdoor
Yeah.
and Facebook page and the website.
Yes.
Good.
So Yvonne's in charge of advertising. Also, I've dealt with a lady who was almost scammed by a telephone scam and was receiving lots of scam calls, numerous a day. So I've been out and fitted a true call device, which has got rid of the problem
Good.
really well. So that was nearly 2 weeks ago. That was. And just generally chatting to people, being visible as and when I can. I know Lee's visible as and when she can be as well. And we're still working on a date to try and do a talk up at the school as well. Although it's probably pushing it for this term now, so we may have to look at the new term in September. But, anything else? I think that's it. If anyone's got any issues they want to raise.
Can I ask you a quick question on the true call device? You say you went out and fitted that. Is that something that members of the public can get hold of it themselves, or how does that work?
So I think there's lots of devices around,
Right.
but we work closely with Trading Standards, and we've done a lot of work with them around scams and visiting scam victims. They've given us lists of people in our areas that we go and visit. So we're doing sort of that multi-agency approach. But this particular one was a lady that spoke to me, and I just then went to the Trading Standards people who are in charge of that. They had a spare device that we could use, and then I arranged to take it out.
And what does it do? Does it screen the calls that are coming in?
It screens the calls coming in.
Yeah.
So basically, when someone phones, I think it asks if they're a friend or family to press 1. Obviously, that will automatically get rid of the computer-generated calls.
Yeah.
You will still maybe get some that come through like that. But then you can also sign up on the website. You can register numbers that are safe numbers, so that you've just got the safe numbers coming in. You can also go on and put in particular numbers that you want blocked as well. So it's got a sort of double side. And also you can monitor what calls are being blocked as well. So you can log into your account and see how many calls have actually been blocked since for that month and that.
So is that just a temporary thing that
it for, there's no time limit on it, but we have the serial number so we know where all the devices are. So, you know, if at any point, like you say to you, she can have it indefinitely, but if she decides she doesn't want it anymore, then...
I think some of the phone companies, I might all do it, but I know that my parents in Cranbrook, I don't know who supplies their phone system there, but they have a sort of similar system they can elect to have.
Yes,
There's no
I
computer
think-
involved, so the first time anyone phones,
Yeah.
there's a kind of a delay that you have to say who you are and they have to accept you. Once they've accepted you, you're deemed a safe number.
Yes.
Because I know
think
with elderly
BT
people,
certainly have something
yeah,
like that.
it's
Call guard, it's called.
Is it
Yes,
called
Sky-
that?
Sky
Okay.
do it.
Yeah, I know lots
Okay.
of companies do, but I think people generally have to pay a monthly
Yes, yes,
fee
yes,
for that sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah,
So,
okay.
Alan,
Thank you.
wanted to...
What I can't remember is whether Rotherham's part of your...
I do cover Rotherham.
you do, sorry. And I think it was last week or no less than 10 days ago, Wilma, my wife, Mrs. Lloyd Smith, was proceeding in an easterly direction along Frogs Lane. That's from Rotherham Lane through to the main road. And there was a car parked in the middle of the road and an altercation in process.
Okay.
So she sat for 5 or 6 minutes and then wound her window down and said, excuse me, please, any chance of moving on? And the gentleman in the car who was parked in the middle of the road said, well, I've just caught this chap fly tipping in that gateway.
Oh, okay.
And I'm not letting him go. And Will said, well, I'm with you on this one because you really shouldn't. And he said, I've taken the number and I'm reporting him to the police. But he denies it. But I saw him do it. And I've just actually been past the same place, and the debris, which is considerable, is still there in a gateway.
Well, I haven't heard any reports.
So he obviously took fright and
Okay,
didn't.
so Frog Lane.
I
Did
certainly
you say
don't
Frog
have a
Lane?
look.
So if you know, I mean, you're Frogs Lane, you turn
Yeah.
left at the other end of Rotherham Lane, and it's about halfway along on the right. There's a gateway in the woods,
Okay.
and there's a rubber tarpaulin, and there's a whole load of brickwork and stuff.
Oh.
And it was still there 1 hour ago.
Okay, well, I'm out with Colin, the dog warden, tomorrow,
Mhm.
who also does fly tipping. So I will.
What I unfortunately don't know whether the gentleman did or indeed didn't report it. He said he was
Okay.
going to, and I mean there was an awful spat.
And
I mean,
presumably he had the registration number.
he
of
did. So
chap's
whether
vehicle as
he's
well.
backed off and just not
Okay.
bothered, but
Yeah.
you know he was clearly extremely angry.
Yeah.
That-
Did he live near there?
I don't know who he was,
Oh, okay.
and Wilma
Yeah.
didn't know him either. No,
Okay.
so,
I'll look into that one because I'm out with Colin.
but
tomorrow.
it is still there. So.
Okay.
Good. Anyone else? I've got on next door, which you do see our... Well, you don't see our next door, no. People here will have seen it if they look. It was a new scam on me. I don't know if you've seen the Microsoft technical department is suddenly emerging very regularly again.
Yeah.
This particular one, which I was lucky to be suspicious of because it was relatively plausible. My wife was abroad and it was claiming to be Visa, ringing up to check a couple of payments and see whether they were genuine or not.
Right.
So, and it sounded perfectly good. I'm usually a bit suspicious anyway, but what actually threw it was, knowing she was abroad but I was here and we do have Visa cards, I asked them which card number it was on and they said, I can't give it to you over the phone. And I said, well, I can't do anything about it then. And said, well, I'm going to ring the bank, which would be my normal thing. They didn't try to dissuade me, which apparently they usually would. I rang the bank and they said, complete garbage, it's a scam. They said Visa will never ring.
No.
All they would tell me was that the card began with 4, and apparently all Visa cards began with
Yes,
4.
I know. They all begin with
But the other thing I thought of, but not actually as he said it, was that it's rubbish to say I can't give a card number over the phone, because we give a card number over the phone all the time when we order mail order. So I just thought that was actually a new version.
I've had that one as
You have
well,
had
twice
that
in a
as well.
day,
Okay.
and it said, if what's it say, that we have seen a payment of £600
Yeah,
on
yeah,
your
indeed.
account.
That's the sort of
If
thing.
you haven't made it, press 1. I pressed nothing, told them what they could do with themselves, but there's nobody at the end, of course, that it's recorded.
No, mine was actually a voice. Mine was
it?
a proper conversation.
But I had exactly that last week.
Because all these things, of course, they're not being done once, they're being done
No.
a million times. So they will
It's a
be
numbers
fun.
game, isn't it,
Yeah.
for them?
Indeed.
They're just-
Okay, enough said. Right, nothing else on Joe? What would you like to tell us, Kate?
I was going to say on that note, have you reported that to Action Fraud as well? Just so they're aware of this
I
scam.
didn't do it. I thought, well, I'm not likely to be the first one, as it were, but I thought in the village I
But
might be.
obviously
Yeah.
it paints a picture as well, because there are a lot of clever scammers out there at the moment. And sadly, if someone has already been scammed, they then put them on what's called a suckers list.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
And they get more scammed,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
When you say to now, I'm just wondering now whether I did actually go and look at that. There was something recently where I was going to report something, and I don't remember what it was now, and because it was all based on tick boxes, it was impossible to report. You know,
Okay.
I don't know if this was the one.
So Action Fraud, you can either do it online with them, or whenever I go out to visit people, I tend to ring them for them, and then they can actually explain to the person on the phone
Yeah, sure.
what's actually happened. It's always better to
Yeah.
speak to someone. It does take, don't get me wrong, it does take a little while to get through to them, but it's always best to
Yeah.
Okay. No,
report it.
I can do that, as I say. I thought it was worth putting on next door because some people, I mean, I was, whether I would have fallen for it, I don't know. It didn't make sense. It was
Yeah.
allegedly a cash payment to Poland and an eBay, and neither of them are in our group. But I was also, as I said, lucky because I really did need to know whether they were talking about her card or mine,
Yeah.
and that actually is what threw it.
All I would say is Joe and Lee always fill me in what's going on in the village if I'm not out and about. Obviously, ring mirrors, we need to look into that on who's causing this, whether this is a one-off or whether there's a spate going on. So I will be looking into that. Obviously, there's no CCTV, sadly, of proving who's out there or if anyone else has heard anything through the village of who possibly could have been doing it. Also, Lee's told me about a moped that's in the village. Obviously, with my newsletter that I put some information out about mopeds and bits and pieces, noise alone we can't necessarily do because unfortunately mopeds are very loud. Unless they've modified them and we've got the correct equipment to check that, we can't really do the noise. We can do the dangerous driving and bits and pieces like that, but the noise as a whole, unless it's at extortionate times of night and bits and pieces, or they're driving with on an L plate with a pillion, things like that we can do.
There is one very noisy one, and I know exactly where it is. You can
And
talk
I
about
think
that.
I know exactly where it is as well.
And it's a learner, and
Yes.
it is very, I mean, I know that they can be noisy, but this one, I'm pretty sure is too noisy.
It's proving it, so we're monitoring it. I promise you.
Yeah,
All
good,
right.
good. I mean, it really is disruptive.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to make an observation. I did talk to somebody just the other day, a terribly responsible citizen, a grown-up in his 50s who has a motorbike. And he said he'd actually decided to make his motorbike really noisy because otherwise he got ignored and motorists didn't see him coming. And if they heard him coming, which they now do, he said he felt a lot safer.
Okay.
I thought that was something I hadn't thought of.
As long as it's correctly modified and it's not.
Yeah. So he now
I
gets...
suppose that's different if he's just travelling from one place to another. Whereas the ones we're talking about are generally the ones that are riding round and round and round the village.
They just go up
in
and
the
down,
same-
up and down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's when it causes a nuisance,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
That's a different
And there are things we can do, so we are monitoring it.
Good.
I've had a good day today. I've met a colleague from Sussex today, another PCSO that backs onto the areas that I cover, and which was very informative. So we're going to do information sharing. So if there's things happening, a bit like the churches that were being hit last year, they were also being hit. So it's good information from likewise. Next couple of weeks we've got safety in action for the year 5 and 6 children that are going to secondary school. We're doing certain days that will be at Ashford Fire Station. We do 2 weeks, but obviously we're not there every day. Different people are doing that.
So I meant to say I'm doing that as well.
I was going to say.
I'm there for 3 days on days that schools my area.
So yeah, lots of things going on. There's obviously it's the summertime, so there's events going on and bits and pieces, but all is good. All is good.
Good.
Yesterday, Tenterton-wise, just so residents are aware, there was a chap knocking on doors about 7:30, mainly elderly people he was knocking on, asking whether they'd like him to do their garden in the pouring rain. So just be aware that they're out and about.
I think there was a very serious accident on the A28 at Rotherham just last week or the week before. Is there anything following up on that?
It was a few weeks ago.
It's a dangerous road, I hate it.
Yeah, they will monitor that. Nothing's come back to me on that one. I haven't got any update on
I
that.
put in a report about that stretch of road about a year ago because the
Is
chap
it the
that's got
corner?
a farm,
Yeah.
he asked me if there was anything I could do, and I actually put in a report because he explained all the different accidents that had happened there over the years, and I put in a report to see if they could come up with some sort of safety measures.
Is that where he's put a camera up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was after my visit to him
Yeah.
and trying to get something done with highways.
Highways.
But highways wouldn't do anything, and that's why he went and put that camera up and put the slow sign on it. Because
That's
It just needs to go back to highways again, because if you see that on the Small Hive Road now, they've just changed the
Yeah.
speed limit to
Yeah.
50,
Yeah.
so that's down to highways. So.
Because that stretch of road becomes particularly relevant to Wittersham
Yeah.
when Peening Quarter is closed, for example.
Absolutely.
In fact, it's perfectly possible the accident happened while that road was closed. I'm not sure.
Okay.
But the road was closed because the signs said the road was closed for 3 days, but it was only actually closed on 1 day.
Yeah, it was only about
Because
4
I
hours.
went
They
through.
removed the signs.
It was
I
only
went-
about 4 hours.
There was certainly a
I
lot
went
more
through
traffic.
there for several days, but everyone else was going all the way around because it said the road was
That's right,
closed.
there's a lot more traffic past ours.
Yeah. They don't know. They seem to take a long time to take signs down sometimes.
Yeah.
I noticed that there was 4 residents in Small Hythe last week had a monitoring instrument checking the miles.
Yes, Small Hive have Speedwatch.
Yeah.
So they've set up a Speedwatch group.
Mm.
So
But 4 of them were at 8:08.
yeah, Yeah.
It wasn't very pleasant outside.
And what did they do?
With that?
You get done over if you get caught speeding.
they will.
No, I didn't get what you. No, they just report it.
I think there's several stages before that.
There are.
So it's not an immediate sort of.
Not personally to me. You know, I was abiding by the rules of the road on that occasion.
As a parish councillor, we're very pleased to hear it.
Anything else?
No, that's all. Thank you.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Roger,
Yes, as representing the residents, as I seem to be tonight.
all of them.
All of them. Just 2 quick things, if I may. At the risk of being called Pothole Parker, can I raise potholes again? You may recall that 2 months ago when I was here, I talked about the one at the end of the Swan Cottages. And I took the advice, as I usually do, and it's good advice, and it was. I went to the website and I saw that it was all, that area all the way down Swan Street as well, was all there for being planned to be done. About 2 weeks ago, the one at the end of Swan Cottages was done, except it wasn't, was it? The bit that was done very well, I have to say. I'm full of praise, but they left all the other potholes absolutely ludicrous. And I just want to make it public here because it is outrageous in terms of money wasting. Somebody's going to come out again. Those potholes are full of water. They're getting into the road. They're going to get all sorts of things. Anyway, I think that's enough said because I took the photograph, as you know, Mr. Chairman, and I sent it to you, and you have sent it on. So,
As just for the benefit of other councillors and their 3 visitors, the head of Highways, Transportation and Waste at Kent County Council came to talk to us 2 weeks ago at Calc, excuse me, I've heard from him before. He gave a good presentation, and among other things, he made it clear that he has changed the system on potholes, that they now patch them rather than fill them, which this one was, meaning they cut it out rather than just chuck a bit of stuff on the top. And that he has told them that if they have nearby potholes that have not yet reached the intervention limit, they should do them anyway to avoid having to come back. Having seen that they had done this one but not 3 within 2 foot of it, including actually abutting it, I think, Roger sent me a photograph and I sent it off to him with a slightly sarcastic note saying that some of his message is getting through but not the rest of it. The other thing that made it particularly lovely was that he's really keen on white lining. He says we've got to keep our white lines fresh. And the lovely thing is that having not filled in the other 3 potholes, they put a new white line across the one they did. Perfect.
I managed to photograph
So
it,
we'll
but
see
it's
what he does.
full of water, so it's very obvious that they're really quite deep.
It is, they are not, the thing is they're not at the intervention limit, that's the point. But he did say if they're getting near it,
Well, they are. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean,
because
they are
even what is at the
dangerous.
bottom is soft, it's coming out.
Anyway.
So anyway, I absolutely right, and I have sent it straight to him, not because that's what we need to do with potholes, to be honest, but because it gives him the opportunity with his team to say what's going on.
Yeah, ridiculous.
He is impatient to change things,
Yeah.
but I know that it's going to take him a long time because they are hugely resistant,
Thank you.
as our ex-Kent colleagues would tell you, I think. 2 of them.
And the second one, very quick, I see on the agenda number 8 is the change of name possibility.
Yes.
May I say from my point of view, and I know others, absolutely welcomed if you agree it. And how about considering a sign which says, "Welcome to the Memorial Garden. Around you will find the following memorials." Something like that, at both gates, might be just something to welcome you into the environment, which is wonderful.
That's a good point. We have on our long-running task list of branding the assets, which we've talked about over the last year or 2, but we haven't got to yet. One benefit of deciding whether we want to change the name is obviously we should change it before we sign it, and then if we're going to sign it, we can sign it as we decide. Whether that'll be what you suggest.
Can
I just mention, I was going to mention later on in the highways, but it's sort of relevant in terms of signage. We do have a number of street signs in the village that are looking incredibly scruffy. The one that says the street, I noticed it because they were all busily doing up the triangle, and the street you can barely read, looks very scruffy. The entrance to your road and Coombe as well. How do we go about fixing that, or do we just give Alf a paintbrush and hope he can touch it up?
Is that something you can report to?
It's
Highways?
actually
Highways.
it's the Borough Council.
Oh, is it
It's the Borough
Yes,
Council,
yes, I
okay.
can take
Can we make a list of that later on maybe and do it, because it does look terribly
the
scruffy.
one at the bottom of Forge Meads is really bad.
Yeah.
And I saw that it was out there with the site manager.
Yeah.
I mentioned it, and he said, "All right," and that should be done end of July, beginning of August. So it can happen.
The
Yeah.
best then that they have the others and they come along and do them all together.
Should we just take a photo? That's a very sensible idea, Mr. Chairman.
I realise
I'm
it
joking, Joe.
never worked.
Do we take a photo? Is there a facility to take a, you just with a, your iPhone, just go and then send them off? Is that the best way of doing it? We could probably do that between us.
I can do that.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is that if they really are illegible, I know they're getting towards, if they're really illegible, then it's illegal. Ashford is required to have signs with a name on every road.
Like Stocks Road, for example, which has no name at either end.
Interesting point.
Stocks Road has no nameplate at all.
They are supposed to, because when the argument was going on about Owen Court, I looked it up, and they're definitely, it's ancient, it's sort of 1900 or
I
1800
mean, my
or
address
something.
does not include a road, it is just the name of the house. And since we're one of the new houses built in 1974, as most of the residents say, you live in the new houses. And you would expect a road. But
Well, I sympathise because I live in a road which has the wrong name. Because if you look at the deeds of the buildings all around there, it's Wittersham Road.
Yes.
Google and every sat nav in the world has its Wittersham Road, and they put up Poplar Road. And I don't know whether we can change that. It's just terribly
We have,
confusing.
so I can remember we had a big discussion.
Because
on that.
Poplar Road doesn't actually begin until...
So you're Wittersham Road, Wittersham.
Peeling Quarter, isn't it?
No, the legal address is Wittersham Road, Wittersham.
You're
But
probably
the first
thinking,
sign
you know,
it says Poplar Road.
But
Is
so
it
that,
Peeling
so
Quarter?
that Cooper's Corner, that bit
Yeah.
there, it says Poplar Road, but it's the wrong place. So any
Right.
delivery person, you know,
Yes,
and, they,
right.
and luckily they don't rely on signs. They look at Google or sat-navs or what have you.
Postcode.
And if you look at the maps that Ashford issue for planning purposes, it says Wittersham Road. Everything is Wittersham Road apart from the actual signpost, which must have been a...
You need to talk to your borough councillor.
I knew there was something I should speak to. Right, I will do that forthwith. And I'll mention the Stocks Road thing at the other end as well.
The estate agent calls Swan Street Swan Lane because it sounds more gentrified.
Then Back Street.
Back.
Right.
No, that's
Moving
the
quickly
original
on.
map.
Can we then close the public session? Everyone finished? Thank you very much for your contributions. I know Joe wants to go. You'll be very welcome to stay, but if you wish to go,
I do
we
need to go.
understand.
I do apologise, but yes.
We
Thank
understand.
you
It's
very much
busy
for
out there.
coming, Kate. Your,
Thank you.
your presence is appreciated. Yes, thank you.
Take
Nice
care.
to see you.
Bye bye.
You going as well?
Bye, Joe. Bye, Lee.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
I think the pressure on Roger as the representative of the general public.
Right, Roger, you've got a big
You're-
job now.
I will, yeah.
Say it as you see it.
I'll keep quiet.
Puff yourself up a bit, you know.
Just remember, Roger, your job now is to go.
Yes.
Can you move round to the next seat, Roger, and then next one after?
Start video instead.
Right, off we go. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of May, you've all had them. Did anyone have any concerns? If not, can I sign them as a true record?
Yeah.
Everyone agreed?
Yes.
Thank you.
4 pages up.
Very good.
Good, thank you. Matters arising. Change of KCC policy on preschool transport update. I would like to say there is a bit of a... I think you sent the letter.
Yes.
Yes, we have read the letter.
I can give you my view on that, but equally you may say, no, I don't want your view on that in any detail. It needs more study. It is tangled. I've written myself a lot of notes, but I will skim them. It is tangled. The problem is that the legislation is a bit sketchy.
Mm.
The legislation, apart from being in 3 different places, really deals with what they saw, I would say, as the problem, which was that children under 3 miles don't get it and children over 3 miles
Good.
do. And therefore it focuses on the fact that the 3 mile limit must be by an available route which is safe. It doesn't say safe, but it means safe. They don't then take any particular line on the closest school, which is in the legislation, as to how you decide it's closest.
Do you mean 3 miles or 6 miles?
3. There's
Oh.
3. It's all about 3. The letter says 6, wrong way.
Yes. Oh,
Mm.
right.
It's 3.
Confused.
Below
It's
3
3.
miles, the child, if it is an available route which is safe, is required either to walk on their own or, if necessary, with an adult. The moment it's over 3 miles, they have to provide transport, but only if it's to the closest school.
Mm.
They have therefore decided, and this is where they go completely off-piste, that they will decide which the closest school is by considering, now you're over 3 miles by now, they'll decide whether it's the closest school, considering any footpaths or bridleways, but you're not walking now, you're in a vehicle. They will take no interest in whether it's safe, although they do feel it must be available, but it evidently doesn't have to be available to the vehicle that they've got to put you in. Only when they've decided which is the closest school, by dint of this process which is not covered by the legislation at all, will they then say, now, how will we get the children there in a vehicle which is safe, etc., etc., etc. Now, it's not closest anymore, but we don't care, because we already decided it was closest by the system that you're not allowed to do. Well, when I say you're not allowed to do it, there is no provision for it. If you could measure a route which you're going to be put on a bus for, but go down footpaths and bridleways, then the legislation might as well have said it would be by as the crow flies. It's not going to go that way either. The whole logic is available, safe. But that is actually in the legislation to do with the 3 miles. We can reasonably argue that if they said, well, what about Dead Man's Lane? Well, if you can't walk, if you have to have a safe route to walk, if it's less than 3 miles, why are you allowed to go on an unsafe route when it's more than 3 miles? You know, you can make those arguments reasonably, but their thing is cockeyed. Now, the 6 miles is interesting because there is in legislation, I think, or certainly in their policy, something that says over 6 miles they don't have to provide transport at all, because you're not supposed to go more than 6 miles. But obviously that's lunatic, because in many country areas there is no school within 6 miles. Incidentally, it's 15 if you are going to a religious school. But they've said they say as a sort of gracious point that over 6 miles they will consider only roads. But actually they should only consider roads above 3 miles, because by that stage they must put you in a bus and the bus can't go down footpaths. And they've actually spelt this out in their reply to me. The other thing is that, which is slightly amusing, that a lot of this is in Schedule 35B, which I quoted, and they've made it 5B. 5B is both about something else and has been repealed.
Well, I admire your fortitude in persevering, first of all.
My frustration.
Well, okay, because I read it and I felt I was an extra on an old episode of Yes Minister. I was and I read it again and I was none the wiser. But it struck me that it's a complete muddle, and there is inaccuracy in it. And the only thing I could think of was maybe it might be useful considering writing to the neighbouring council. Either Rother or East Sussex, just seeking clarification as to whether or not they consider Dead Man's Lane suitable for unaccompanied small children or worse to that effect. And you might just get a statement.
I've got some of this already, because I spoke to the school and asked them, this is Rye College, asked them some months ago, did they have a school rule to say that the children are not allowed to walk along Dead Man's Lane? And she said, we don't need one, because they wouldn't dream of doing it. They all go down to the station and walk across the car park. The problem is that Kent, I honestly think that they're making up their answers to try and unpick whatever I say, but I think they're getting more and more bizarre. It doesn't matter whether they think that children should walk along Dead Man's Lane, because they're pushing this line that we will measure it along Dead Man's Lane, even though you will never go along there, because it's too big for the bus, too small for the bus one way, dangerous for them to walk, and it's a one-way street. But it doesn't matter, because we will call it an available route, even though it isn't available.
Is this a case of, and Colin probably know more of this than I would, but is this a case where you as you move just continuously towards this everlasting impasse, that you get some form of ombudsman involved?
That's right.
I mean, to me, that's the purpose of the ombudsman.
There is the ombudsman, and the ombudsman wrote a report, which is online, a couple of years ago, in which he said there are increasing numbers of challenges on preschool transport, and I have noticed many cases where the councils are not doing what they should, and they should improve their policies, they should make it clearer, they should do this, do that, do the other. Kent have just changed their policy. They haven't made it clearer, they've made it what looks to me like a bit of a confusion, but they've tried to cover every base to say you're not allowed it if we don't want to give it to you, more or less. I don't think the Ombudsman can actually give a declaration, or a determination rather. I think he can complain about them, but they don't have to take any notice.
It smacks of a situation which is only in the end going to be resolved by some sort of legal challenge.
Indeed.
That's right.
And you know, it's sort of like Arthur Haggett's misleading cases, really, isn't it?
Yes,
and because it's got ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is.
I've got a funny feeling that actually, Jeremy, I think your letter was splendid, and I was dismayed by Roger Goff's reply, because I lost the thread and lost the will to live several times before I completed it.
Yes.
I think that sadly, the only way a legal challenge will come about is if a child actually comes to harm while going down one of these obscure ways.
But in a way, you see, they know that none of that's going to happen.
Well, isn't it?
The children will continue to go to Homewood, and the parents will have to make other arrangements for their transport. They're not going to pay the £400 generally to put them on the bus. They're going to drive up and down.
They are, which isn't what we want either, because
Absolutely
it's
not.
all
Right.
these extra vehicles, and
Well,
Indeed.
that one would suspect that the men will collect together a number of.
people aren't like that. They don't. They try
Yeah.
shared school transport,
Mm.
and then there's a spat, and they say, "I'm never going to travel with that person again," and so they all go on their own. I mean,
The ombudsman route's right, but to do the ombudsman route, it really should be an individual.
George.
Yeah, I was going to
Not
say,
the parish
I think
council.
there are two issues. The issue is the one you're pursuing,
Mm.
which is about the interpretation of the law. The other one, which was in some ways for parents a bigger issue last
That's
year,
right.
was the fact they didn't know that it was going to be applied.
Yeah.
Whereas I think KCC at least this year have let people know in advance. They know exactly what they were letting themselves in for. Whether they agree with it or not is another issue. But at least they knew what it was that they were doing. Before they bought the uniforms, before they bought the special laptops or everything else, they knew that they were going to have to pay if that's what they wanted to do. So at least half the battle has been won by getting KCC to make sure that the parents were aware of that.
Yes.
So
I did send a note to the school and asked them to give it to all the children who were going to Homewood this September. They did say to me they'd done that when I asked them later. I haven't had any contact me, none. But then they may not yet have had it turned down. The one who has contacted me in the past is in the walled cottage just down the road, by Wittersham Court. He has run into trouble, not in the cycle, but because the children are already at Homewood. They used to live, I think there's two, maybe, certainly one, but maybe
They
two.
lived at Peasmarsh, didn't
This is a,
they? Apple.
yeah, they were with the mother in Appledore, and they've now moved to the father here.
Mm.
They reported to the school that they now needed to get a different bus, and were promptly told you're not eligible. In other words, this is Kent even saying, you are now in year 9 or something, you must move to Rye school. I mean, it is that bad. He is appealing, and he's just been given a date of his, I just got an email from him today, he's got an appeal on the 21st of June. Now, he did tell me that he has made an FOI request to them for a whole load of questions. I didn't read them all, but I did see that it was quite meaty. He's a professional IT person or something like that. They were supposed to have replied by yesterday, but they didn't. So he may ask for a deferral until he gets the information. My guess would be that they will backheel a load of the requests under the FOI on, a disproportionate cost and information not collected and all that sort of thing. But he is definitely going to have a good go at it. He wants to talk to me beforehand. It'll be interesting to see what happens at the panel if he does give them a good go, because I suspect that if he goes in there and says you're breaking this clause, that clause and the other clause, the members are going to ask the officer, is that true? And the officer's going to say no, and they're saying, well, we're not then. And I don't know where he takes it afterwards. I think, and this is an area where I'm not very clued up now, but I think that the legal route is not very easy for them. There are no, as I understand it, there's no legal aid, even if we get someone off one of the estates. There's no legal aid for judicial review, which is the proper path when a public body is behaving wrongly. If you haven't got legal aid, 50,000, I believe, is a sort of round figure for a judicial review. That may be exaggerated. That's what my legal boss used to tell me.
Yes, that's more than I thought, but I thought 30 anyway.
Yeah, well indeed. Okay, call it 30. The trouble is, it's still a long way away. There's a possibility...
Unless you're insured for that sort of thing, and there are some people who find...
Of course, they have insurance, but they have to usually approve that you can... That's a good point, actually. They have to approve that you can take the case and it's got a limit. And they also have to feel that you've got a chance. That's an interesting thought, because you get legal advice on whether you've got a case.
In the first place.
One of the things that did occur to me is that we could do, and I'm talking we loosely, Wittersham if you like, not necessarily the council, we could do actually with advice from either a public law lawyer, because that's what it is, or an education lawyer who's done it in particular because they've seen other cases, even if it doesn't go to court. The other thing that's in my mind is the Secretary of State. If you recall, the Secretary of State wrote to congratulate Wittersham Primary School about their results, and it occurs to me that a letter that would write itself would be, Dear Secretary of State, I was delighted to see that you wrote to Wittersham Primary School to congratulate them on being in the top 1% of all schools in the country. You will probably be as disappointed as I was, therefore, to learn that Kent County Council is now demanding that the children from Wittersham Primary School, instead of going to their good Tenterden, Homewood school in Tenterden, should instead go to the failing Rye College or pay for their own transport. This is barely acceptable under government policy, even if the measurement of distances was right, but it isn't. And it would be very helpful to us if you let us know your opinion and asked your lawyers to look at it. And here, by the way, is the package of documents.
It's a bit below the belt.
And that would be copied to Paul Carter.
Yes. I think you should refrain from advertising in that type of letter that Rye possibly is failing.
Yes.
It's not, no, it isn't possibly. It's an Ofcom.
But I think we shouldn't. I think we shouldn't be heralding it.
I think Alan's right. I think we should emphasise the positive, that the continuing education, the natural course, the school of choice, etc., to maintain those high standards.
The point is that if they were in a good primary school, they shouldn't be sent to a failing secondary school.
Well, that will not operate across the board.
Yeah, but that sort of accepts that we're all accepting that Rye is going to fail and continuing to fail. Which we don't. We shouldn't.
They are trying to improve.
Of course they are.
I think what you can say is that Rye is available at this point in time as a facility.
You'll have to also sufficient evidence over the years of following a sibling. So, one child goes there and you don't want to prevent...
Tradition. I mean, you might say that this wouldn't be an appropriate school for this child, but I don't think we should emphasise the fact that why.
No.
All right, okay. I did talk to my gardener today, who's followed this. When I say my gardener, I mean the one who comes 2 hours a week.
He represented the staff.
But he was brought up here.
That's a lot. And he doesn't just go in the rain, does he?
And he said that Homewood has been the follow-on school since it was built.
Well, that's probably right, but the process is changing by KCC, which is very clear.
Well, it wasn't actually a school. It was very nearly. It was a cottage hospital, and one of my predecessors had it earmarked, and it was whisked away from under his feet, and it became Homewood School. But it was all set to be a cottage hospital.
God, that would have been a big one.
Well, the building, the very big building, that was going to be.
Mansion.
That was going to be.
All right, so
that would save us a lot of time.
So where are we going with this? I understand entirely Alan's point about it's not going to be solved easily without legal, but it's hard to get to that point. I take your point about Ombudsman and Collins, but while at the moment, I thought we'd have had more parents contact me after my note that you've seen a copy of, but that may still come because the one who's been on to me is not in the annual cycle. His children moved earlier, so we may find in another month there's
their situation's different.
Well, I would suggest possibly you use social media, something like Nextdoor, and maybe you craft something that says we're pulling together requests information or what have you in the village. It's a village initiative of all those parents, and that will be word of mouth. And if you craft it in the appropriate way, you'll get the response. People do talk. It's very effective Nextdoor. You get and I think what you have to do is gather together as much of, and sometimes people don't react unless the flames are licking around the ankles kind of thing, and you have to kind of, I think, ginger them up a bit so that we do get, because there's only so many times you can go back and do these things. We need to really assemble as much evidence and information and then decide how best to marshal that.
And I think one conclusion we can reach is that none of you were particularly swayed by their letter. It's not just me. I don't want to be on a one-man.
I thought the letter was probably one of the poorest pieces of communication I've seen in my own memory. Secondly, I didn't really understand it. Thirdly, you've now pointed out there's some factual errors, and that sort of sloppiness is indicative of how it's dealt with in a very,
I thought it was something wrong with me. I thought I really had it, but I read it 3 times and still had no idea where I was going from.
No.
Yes, it didn't clarify anything, and it didn't help the argument either way, did it?
No.
I question whether or not they're taking this seriously enough.
I think
And maybe we need to ramp it up.
I think they have from the start been saying run along there.
Yeah.
Colin?
Yes.
Cut and paste.
I think it's worth putting something in Wittersham, but the expectation that comes from the parents then, in how is Wittersham Parish Council going to continue to take it forward, will become an issue.
Sorry, how is, if we put something out there...
If
saying
you
how
put
are we
something
going
in, if you get the responses, how do you or the parish council take that matter forward yet again?
Well, you're right, that lines us up for what you're going to do next. But on the other hand, if we drop it at this point, we're dropping it on a rather unsatisfactory response that doesn't satisfy the questions that we've put.
In which case you need to take it officially to somebody way above.
Yeah.
If that's how you're feeling.
You've not heard any more from Damien Green?
No, and that's interesting because he did say, if you remember, in his reply to my legalistic letter that Alan's commented on, I will talk to Kent and see whether we can find a solution. Now, this is not a solution, this is a...
I suspect Roger Goff knows that if he writes a letter like that in this type of circumstance, that tends to be the end of the matter because people lose the
That's right,
word.
that's right.
He didn't write it for sure. I mean,
I think he probably wrote bits, but I think the lead would have written most of it.
So
I think Colin has a good point that you know, sometimes there's a danger we set ourselves up to take the responsibility if it doesn't in fact work. So, however, I think maybe there's two things we should consider. One is, do we as parish council take it forward? You know, I mean, you know, do we make sure that we are fully supporting him? And that's something that we can decide. But then also we need to sort of start to think some contingencies. So if ultimately X number of stages down the road it gets kicked out, we fail, or what have you, we need to be proactive or go on the offensive. Maybe that's not the right phrase, but actually then communicate with the parents something on the lines of, we did all we could, we put forward the case, we pushed it to the limit, sadly we got turned down by the Secretary of State or whatever.
Are
So,
we aware
you know, they know.
of any parents that are currently unhappy with the situation?
No.
The answer is
the
no. The
thing
only
is
one
the
you're
school
aware of
won't
is
tell
the
us.
one that's moving from Appledore, which is a totally different movement.
Yeah,
School
it's
won't
totally
tell us.
different.
What we do know last year, and of course last year was more of a balls up really, but last
But
year
then-
it bubbled up very quickly.
Residents raise that locally. So my issue, my point is exactly what you're saying really. Is this something we're running with and actually there's nothing behind us, it's just us? Or is there a groundswell there that we're helping to support and represent and guide?
You're right, except that the working assumption from last year was, if we don't fix this, it'll all come up again. And of course that was the line I put in the letter as well. You're heading for a load more appeals. Their answer is to say, so if we get appeals, so what? We'll deal with them. I know that Mike Hill has already said, you know, he will go to the appeals. I'll come to this in a minute as well. He'll go to the appeals, but they don't like them.
But do we know there
There's
are going to be
officers
any
on the
appeals?
panel.
That's the issue.
Mm.
Do we know any parents
I would
like
have thought anyone who didn't get it would go to appeal.
But we don't know.
When will they
We
know?
don't know, no.
That's the one we need
When,
to do.
when will the parents
Last
know?
year, I think it was about July they walked.
It was July.
Yeah.
Well-
But that was partly because of the ambiguity of the information that they initially had. This year, Kent County Council have been very clear, as far as I'm
they've
aware.
all got their places. They know
Yeah,
what school.
That's
But
right.
it's when they've put in the forms
Yeah.
for the transport.
When could they put the forms in?
It's up to the parents.
It's up to the
really.
Well, we
parents.
should be encouraging parents, right?
Well, this is another issue, isn't it?
Put the
They're
forms
probably
in.
thinking
it's perfectly,
July time,
it's perfectly
probably.
possible that this new cohort of parents has actually been told in advance that there's no transport, and are actually say, well, okay, I don't want to go on. It's perfectly possible that the problem actually will go away because they're going to be perfectly happy.
This year.
But it may resurrect itself or not. That's another issue. The question you also said is that he sent a copy of this to Damien.
Well, Damien probably has had a struggle with it that we have.
Yes.
Yeah. That I would suggest should have had a response.
Thank you for your kind letter, I'll be in touch.
For a drink, yes. Which comes back to the problem, how do you address and take it forward or not?
I think I'm going to suggest
Or
that
maybe
we
that's
get
something we do, maybe.
tread water for a month.
Okay.
I think you're right, Alan, because
there's no
you know.
immediate urgency.
Yeah, tread water for a month and just see what happens. See if other parents come forward.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
And if we all give it some thought, we might come to some sort of sensible consensus.
The other
about
thing,
what
of
to
course,
do.
is depending on what happens with the treading water, and I'm very happy to do that. It is a pain in the neck. We have the opportunity of writing to Damien and saying, I know you were looking for a solution. We didn't get offered one by KCC. Are you still on the case?
Yeah.
I'm quite happy that you know we corresponded with Damien to say something to that effect, because we are totally unhappy with the response we received from KCC. Stop.
And we could do that now.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think that's. I don't think. I think it is right that you know Damien's been put in the loop. So presenting with a short factual situation that we are dissatisfied as a parish council with the response that we received.
I mean, obviously we know that they've got other things on their mind, but actually that's not really our problem.
No, it isn't our problem. It's the same situation with, because Carter's going in October. So
Sorry?
Carter's retiring in October. Paul Carter.
Paul Carter?
Mm-hmm.
From the council or from the leadership? Oh, really?
The other thing is
So
maybe we
there's
just keep our-
infighting as well going on.
keep our ear to the ground, and if we've got one or two people that we know at the school who can speak, because we can't, the school won't tell
I
us,
won't tell us now.
but can we ask them? As in, sorry, could we, at the appropriate stage, can we ask them to put a letter in everyone's school bag?
Well, that's what we did last time.
That's what.
That's
Yeah.
what I've done that once.
Yeah.
And
No, I think we
The
use
school
tread
we
water
should,
for
yes.
a month because the July is going to. But in the meantime, we make it very clear to Damien Green that we're expecting him at the appropriate stage. We keep him informed, so he can't
Yes.
say I didn't know anything
The
about
school's
it.
in a difficult position, you know, because the KCC employees, but they're not. They can't be happy with parents going in and saying is we're totally dissatisfied with where our child may or may not be
I
going.
don't think they were upset with what we were doing at all. I don't think so, although they are sometimes a little bit tight-lipped. I think the key was that because of GPTR, that they felt they couldn't say very much about individuals.
Well, I would agree with Alan that in fact is we tread water, but we in the meantime send a note to.
Okay. I will see if I can sketch something out and give you an opportunity to see it.
And I think if we tread water, we leave the situation by not putting anything into Wittersham, whatever it is, because they've got to respond and come to us if they want to help.
One other little loose end that I thought was quite interesting, I told you about the panel that this guy's been invited to, the members panel. So far as I could see, there were pages and pages of things, instructions and this, that and the other, and you have to tell them in advance what you want to say and what your new evidence and all the rest of it. But so far as I could see, he can only be accompanied by the county member. And I thought that's not actually good practice.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because when I appeared against the Education Committee on behalf of my grandson, I accompanied my daughter.
Yeah.
And that was a given.
That's normal, isn't it? But this doesn't appear to offer that. This appears to offer you can have the county member to represent your case if you wish.
Well,
now some of the parents who went before, who were accompanied by Mike Hill, who felt he was doing his duty but would rather not have.
I'm not just saying, I think at all, yes, I understand.
What?
Yeah.
They weren't overwhelmed with
No,
his
they wouldn't be.
willingness. But then again, he was one cabinet member attacking another cabinet member.
Well,
It's difficult.
but that's why.
Another.
I mean that's another issue in a sense. But it was made abundantly clear. I mean, we're talking about 7 years ago now. That when the appeal went through to members, I went and my daughter stood up and said, "My father will do the talking," and he accepted.
I wonder whether we've spent long enough on this
Yeah, I
issue.
think so.
Fine, okay. Very happy to move on. So, Sid's update, Clark.
Unfortunately, I haven't worked anything further. I'm still waiting for Ashford. I chased her, but she's on leave. When she comes back.
Okay.
But in the meantime, because obviously the reply comes back if it's urgent, contact somebody else, which I did. and they've said what they have done is they have chased whatever department it is that Sue had, so that when she comes back, they should have the answer for her.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
The BT Whaley. Well, I have a piece of paper in my hand for someone else.
Oh, a piece of paper.
A piece of paper.
That was
Signed on, signed on behalf of the Post Office under the Telegraph Act. It's dated 1979.
Oh.
February. So it's 40 years and a few months.
That's a hell of an invoice we should send them then.
They eventually found it. It's signed on our side by Reg Sweatman. Before Yvonne took over as clerk for the first time. Actually 78, not 79. Dated up here, but 78 down there. It does make sense in a way, because when it seems very odd that it would go straight across the field, it went straight across the field when it used to have a fence there, or hedge, before that was taken away in your time, I think, wasn't it?
What do you mean that there was a fence
Yeah,
along that line that it goes?
green,
Yes.
we call it,
Oh, yeah,
coronation field
okay.
was separate,
Okay.
and it's gone along there.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right.
It doesn't help that, at least where Alf dug into it, it wasn't protected at
No,
all.
no.
It appears to show that we can give 3 months' notice under the way leave anyway, and they suggest if you want a new way leave, then you can combine it. We don't have to combine it, there's only one wire that we know of. I think we have the opportunity to ask them whether it's protected and exactly where it goes and what have you. They'll at least have someone who can come along with a machine and find where it goes. But it really ought to have something over it, otherwise it'll happen again, because it is now across open ground.
It used to be signed or something, shouldn't it? At least
So,
to indicate it's there.
I think that there's the opportunity for Yvonne to continue her discussions with Openreach now we've got
Mm.
into that. Meanwhile, I suggest that we need to talk to the lady whose wire was cut, who of course raised it with us in the first place. There was the issue about her asking, well, I think she sort of proved down later, as to whether we were going to give her any compensation, and we discussed that before, and I don't know what we think.
Are there any financial implications for knowing that this way leave now exists? Do we benefit from that?
We
in any
don't
way?
know if they have a rent on an underground way leave or not. They will know what the rules are.
Yeah.
There will no doubt be loads on them. We get paid for the electric wires.
Yes.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, yeah.
I don't think. Did you not discuss the compensation issue?
There's not any mention of anything, is there?
What would BT? No.
No, we
Finance.
haven't yet. Is that, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
The compensation,
We
Mrs.
discussed it with
Russell.
the woman. Oh no, all I know is that she originally got on to
Yes,
me and asked for compensation. I immediately said, well, is there a way leave?
Yeah.
Is there this and is there that? And are you sure it was us? And blah, blah, blah. When we, later on, before I came here last month, I rang her up or told her that we were on the case, and said, were the council to decide that it might make a payment, what sort of payment were you thinking of? And she said, well, anything would be nice. Because it was her mobile phone costs, because she got pay as you go instead of her landline, which has, she has 3 calls like I do on her landline.
That was the link to what I was asking, whether there was any financial
That's right. Yeah.
implication.
That's
Because if we were going to get a little windfall of something, we might consider using some of that money to make a.
Well, I don't think we're
Easier
talking
payment.
about, if we were to pay anything, then Yvonne has suggested it should be as a gesture of goodwill.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
it
doesn't
does
have to
go-
be
yes.
very much.
No.
I'm presuming sort of £50 or something is,
We have the only thing I would say is, are we setting a precedent?
well, that's the problem.
Because typically if an employee of ours has an accident that causes someone financial loss, it should be therefore claimable under our insurance policy.
But this would be below the
Yeah,
Below the
but-
bill,
but-
yeah.
okay,
deductible.
right.
Anyone have any views on that then?
Well, it depends how much if she's pushing for it. If she's not bothered really, then what's
I think the
See
thing
the
is that
dogs.
when she first talked to me, she was still cut off, and later she was reconnected.
Could we send her a fruit basket from our village shop, or as a gesture, or something? Seriously, something like that, rather than something that's money, because.
bunch of flowers or something?
Well, yeah,
anything
something,
to say.
something. Yeah, as a
Well,
I
she
think the
suffered a
gesture.
monetary loss, of course, is what she's saying.
Well, how does she? Okay, well, how much does she suffer?
Well, I asked her how much she was thinking of, and she just said, well, anything would be nice. At that stage, it wasn't finished. She was still waiting for going back on. She was on a pay-as-you-go. It's whatever she was spending on her mobile.
And
that's a different issue, isn't it?
And she's got,
computer.
and the reason she suffered loss was because her pay-as-you-go would no longer work.
No, she was
no.
using her pay-as-you-go because her internet line
Line.
wasn't working.
She runs a business at home,
Okay,
and everything's on her landline, which has 3 calls,
right.
and her broadband, of course. She
Yes.
lost her broadband. We can't do anything about that.
No,
Well, pay-as-you-go, I mean, mobile phone
pay-as-you-go
calls these
mobile.
days, if you're on a month, it's all-inclusive, and pay-as-you-go is pretty much cheap as chips
But if-
now.
This is life.
and-
I'm sorry.
yeah.
I wouldn't support any sort of financial.
No.
support.
Okay.
This is
And you might well ask, if you were really being hard-nosed, you'd say, could you please have evidence that you're
Yeah.
running a business
But
from
it-
your home,
but it,
which probably that doesn't contravene your mortgage agreement, does it?
This
I mean,
is
but,
life.
but if she's lost the landline, it's the landline's operation.
Well, yeah.
The cost.
Yeah.
If we've done it 20 times, then okay. If we've done it once, it's life. And I think we do nothing. So
Okay. Everyone happy?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that
That's it.
anybody should be
Right.
charged. It's a bloody company.
Sorry, come on.
Or people in Stocks Road.
Whoever they might be. There's no good sending them a letter, it won't get there.
Right. Okay. Right, okay, let's see what comes next. Planning application, the Black Barn Farm, Poplar Road. I didn't ask if anyone had any comments on that, but we didn't have any neighbours.
No.
You are, however, a neighbour. Are you actually, I didn't think of this, are you an other than pecuniary interest?
Well, I suppose if you include me on those...
Did you take a view last time on the planning application? I can't remember.
I supported it last time.
You did support it, that's what I was,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I was going to really not offer any comment. I mean, because it's still in the same place. It's a different construction design material, but it's nothing any bigger.
do we know why there's a change?
Did you not? It was smaller, didn't it?
Did you not read the...
I did, but I can't remember what it
Yes.
said.
It,
Didn't it get nearer to the pond or something?
You know, I
No,
can't
there
remember.
was...
no.
It's a read between the lines.
Oh, well, we're not very good at that.
No, we're not good. We're not good
We're
at
going to read
that.
on the lines, but no,
We're not reading the lines that go between them.
I could see no reason. If it was going to be a vote, I'd probably abstain on the grounds that not offering. I have seen no reason that the previous permission
It's a big change.
There's
You
no
know,
big change.
It's been reconstructed, but I mean, it's not...
The material design has
Design.
changed. The footprint has not. The position of the footprint hasn't. There is some read between the lines there, which is down to personal circumstance. Because the original applicants are no longer together.
right. Okay.
And the other thing, of course, yes.
Both on the same side. But
No. There's been a divorce.
Application isn't different.
No.
I would agree with you.
That's what's
There's no
through- that-
substantial
that's
change.
what threw
I
me,
mean,
actually, yeah.
In fact,
The only other thing, of course, is that the garage that we're waiting for has now been built.
Yeah.
But then
Yes,
we had the correspondence there.
Your correspondence
from
on that.
the authorities saying that that's been
Approved.
approved or
Yeah.
recognised.
Yes.
And excuse me being slow, what's Bernard's house called?
Black Barn Bungalow. It was a complete miss. I mean, if you were going to wind history back, you would have our house as Black Barn Farm.
Yeah.
No, sorry, you'd have Bernard as Black Barn
You
Farm
would.
because he's the farmer.
Yeah.
You'd have us as Black Barn,
Yeah.
and you'd have that property as Black Barn Bungalow because when Peter Ross lived there, it was a bungalow.
Indeed.
But that was in the however these things are decided and what have you. So now we
We're
now
a
get.
local meeting to swap your names about.
Well, we now get all, and it's all on Wittersham Road rather than Poplar Road. So you know, there's a small Channel
So
4
does-
documentary there.
Does
So.
anybody have any
No.
concerns?
No.
And we will support that.
I think we supported it the first time round.
Yeah,
It's not time to change it.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
So we now get to the forward task list. I sent you out what I had done before. I think it was, I may have made tiny changes, but essentially this is not sort of, set in stone. It is just really to try and keep a handle on things that we are trying to do in the longer run. and some of them are very long to run.
Yeah.
Does anyone, first of all, have any things they want to take out of the list or add more onto the list?
Is the adding names to the war memorial on there?
Yes, and it's being done
It's being
today.
done now.
Is it?
It's being done today, yes.
Yes.
That's what.
Well,
Well,
I
hopefully
walked
we can knock that
well,
off next
earlier
time.
on.
Yeah, that's what I was
Earlier on today.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
11
was. I
o'clock.
walked. I walked
Yeah.
past
That's
about.
why I was asking.
4:30.
You have to take it off soon. That was
Mm.
I think we should encourage the people that requested it, because it did get a little bit,
Oh, yeah.
not heated, but enthusiastic. We would be very grateful for their thank you.
Yeah. Well, Dave was up there taking photographs.
Exactly.
While
Is-
the
it
nation
wa-
was doing it.
Yeah.
Was that? Yes, I was.
I think sometimes we're a little bit shy in claiming the appropriate credits, and you know, under the you know, what did the Romans do for you? But the equivalent, what did the Parish Council do for you?
Yeah.
We should remind people that we do get things done eventually.
Tony Bullock did ask me in the
Straight
market, or comment in the market, that they now, since it was being done today, they now need to get there, whoever it is, to come along and wave their arms around
Yeah.
on the
Bless them.
few things that have just been done.
Right.
Added names, the
The
airship
bench.
thing,
The
the
airship.
bench,
Yeah.
the
The
tree.
Yeah.
Has anybody checked the spellings? It wouldn't be the first time.
I don't know.
Engraving.
Don't let's go down
I
that.
have what you had in front of him this
As
morning.
they said in
was
Blackadder
right.
for
It does work for us, right?
I know, but I haven't seen
Let's just
it
assume
since.
that.
But I
Let's
did
assume
say,
it's-
I did
let's
say
assume it's
Dave
all right.
up
It's
there.
not
Dave was the
just
one
got
that
2
gave me
years.
the
Are there
information
any-
in the first place, so he was speaking
Yeah.
to him as I went past. So.
Yeah.
Are there any other things that we want to, apart from that one?
Can I just ask the question about SIDS, in the sense that do we have a risk that will we lose the money?
No, we've got it.
We've got it.
But the money's granted. It's just the discussions,
Yes.
and
We've actually got it in the account.
Yes,
Fantastic.
so the money's with us,
yes.
right?
It's ironic, really, isn't it, that something designed to slow things down is doing just that.
And just going forward to come backwards, is the churchyard wall the
Falling
money
down.
available?
Yes.
Yeah.
Who's head of bus shelters? I've forgotten.
You did.
I think it's open spaces, isn't it?
Is it? I don't think so.
It is at the moment.
It is at the moment.
It's a
Yes, bus shelter must
Yeah.
come into your
Yeah, that's an open
remit.
space.
Yes.
I just didn't want to check. Okay.
yes.
So am I supposed to do any more about that at the moment?
Have you
No, just
have you asked for
just keep an
designs?
eye on it.
Sorry.
You need to keep an eye on it
Yeah.
at the
You keep an
moment.
eye.
I
Just
think,
keep
can I
it-
make a point here? You
Well-
really need to make sure there are solar panels on the roof, so that it's generating an offset carbon.
Neutral.
Can I just
So
raise
it's a heated bus shelter.
Can I raise a serious question about the bus shelter?
I'm listening.
You should see the last word, contractor,
Yeah.
question mark.
Yeah.
I just think that we're not going to get it done anytime soon by Alf.
Oh.
He's got enough
Oh,
other
no,
things
no,
on.
I think
So,
it's a big
You want to go out to tender?
It's a bigger job than
I would agree.
that. Yeah.
whether it's a quote, it may be a quote.
Well, it was.
So have you got anybody in mind?
No.
Nobody in the village?
It
Well,
was,
there could be.
it was suggested that we put it on next door, asked if anybody for a quote.
Well, that's yeah. I think to get on with it, you know, I went past it again yesterday, and it's
And
looking
we've got
real
It
nice.
needs work.
I agree. I think we should. We should
Is it
really.
mainly carpentry or what is it?
It's good work, yeah.
We should aim to have that done before the end of.
I would be
Because
the
the roof is
yeah, ideally,
sealed
yes.
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
be more in favour of approaching somebody we know to be reliable, somebody like what's his
Philip,
name, Sills down in
Andy Sills,
Andy
or
Sills.
Philip.
or Philip.
There's lots
Yeah.
of people. But yeah, advertise it and see if anyone's
Okay.
interested.
All right.
Well,
Okay,
they're
then.
on
But
next
you might
door,
get a
so-
cowboy.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
You might easily get a cowboy.
Or an Indian, as the Duke of Edinburgh once said.
The Poles are very good at the moment.
No, but he was just getting.
We
himself
talk about
confused.
voting.
He meant cowboy. He meant cowboy.
Can I just
Okay.
find out what are we going to do with this?
You're going to put it on next door.
Next door and see if we can get someone interested in giving
Give
us
them
a
an
price.
idea of a, not in detail, but a spec about what's needed to be done, and then just put it out and say, you know.
Okay, the signing we've obviously got to consider. That will be another
Sorry,
month.
can I go back to this spec? Am I making up a spec here? What's the spec? What am I going to ask?
The first thing you want to do is find out people who think they might do it. Then you can.
I think
work
you
out a
put it
spec with them.
Do we
underneath
know not what needs to be
renovation. I think you put it under as renovation of village bus
Yeah.
shelter. That's the operating title, if you like,
Yeah.
and say Parish Council is looking to renovate and refurbish the village bus shelter
At the Union.
at the Ewe and Lamb, and I'm very interested to see if there is any
Expressions of interest.
expressions of
Interest
well,
on
welcome
Teddy's
expressions of interest from people based in the village.
Indeed, and after you've got expressions of interest and you discuss them and do any filtering, then you can ask them for proposals.
Yeah.
But perhaps in the meantime, we can have a look at it and see what we think needs doing.
It
Happy
is.
to do that with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
It needs a major.
Yeah.
Chest tombs in the churchyard. And you mentioned quotes. I did have a quote actually,
Yeah.
but it was a year or three ago, and it was by Fred Lawson. I can't remember his
Guy.
first.
Guy
Lawson.
Wilson, yeah.
And he gave me a quote at the time. He was putting the new cross on the east end of the chancel, £5,000.
To do the chest tombs.
Yes,
A lot of money, isn't it?
I mean, that's what I thought at the time. So I mean, I wouldn't for a moment go down that route without taking it further. But I've got to admit, hands up, I haven't taken it further at this point.
What is quite interesting is
But I
that
remain on the case.
we had the £3,000 claim for the wall, and then we got a £900 claim, quote.
Quote.
Yeah, a quote. We had a quote of about 3,000 for the churchyard wall, which we didn't want to take, and eventually Yvonne got a £900 quote from the man.
But perhaps I wouldn't know. Well, it's
These
a
are a bit
winter.
more specialised, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'll perhaps do a bit of work on that as the rest of the summer
Yeah,
goes by.
That's fine.
Does he need a faculty?
Well,
Have we got one already?
Put it like this. Strictly speaking, if you were to go down the letter of the arrangement, you probably would. If you did it without a faculty, like we put the cross on the east end of the chancel without a faculty, then you'd be able to do it without a faculty.
And there is a new bishop.
Well, the new bishop's a busy man.
Exactly.
And also, of course, they have demanded that we do the chest tombs anyway. So it's a bit
It's
weird
silly
if
to
they
say.
say,
I would try and avoid.
if they say we
all sorts
want
of
you to do them, but now we demand
people
that you ask us
agonise
if we
for
can.
years over faculties before they actually
Yes.
agree to them.
I agree with you.
Could I
So
suggest we
yeah.
take off those last two words then in that last
Yeah.
square?
Well, faculty needed.
Yeah, just get rid
Yes,
of
I
it.
agree with you.
I think we do it and then plead ignorance, if you want
That's
my
right.
opinion.
Yes, I would agree.
Well, there's the whole spirit of the Church of England surely is around
But
forgiveness.
then we might not get past duty, of course, on that, and that's you might
Okay.
insist on the faculty.
All right, going up to the one above it, as this is a suggestion from you, Alan, about a long-term programme for village assets. It's just something that we might think about in the medium term. The revamped children's play area, that's just something I have in my mind. We can talk about another time. Signs we've been hinting at today, but we're going to have to come back to.
I think what we do is we get a
Long-term
register. We should pull together a register of the signs, A, that we need, and B, that need refurbishing, and then we know where we are.
Yeah. I'm not thinking there of street signs, I'm thinking of signs to say.
No,
Okay, that's enough to deal with that then, I think, for now. Wi-Fi in the village hall.
Yeah.
We had a note from Stephen Forever.
We did.
I can't remember that. I can't find it.
Now, Stephen was suggesting not having the landline system, but have this 4G network. It looked to me as though that was going to be not so much expensive. £20 a month might not be terribly expensive, but there's not that much. I didn't think 15 gig of data was that much, but I don't have a good handle on it. Do you ever feel that, Paul?
It's quite
It's
a lot.
quite a lot.
Unless you're downloading, you could probably download 1 or 2 movies a night on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's got,
So it's quite a lot.
I have. What do I have at the moment? I think I have 4 or 5 gig a month,
Oh,
and I don't come anywhere near it. Mind you,
No.
I use my home Wi-Fi, so that doesn't really come into it.
Yes,
so
but I agree with you
Yeah.
with it.
I looked at that and I thought, you know what, let's go with that. We can always upgrade it.
I thought
Let's
it was
get
quite
going.
reasonable.
Yeah.
The
I
other,
really
thing,
did.
the other thing that did strike me, if the parish council was going to pay it, because we had this little to and fro before, if the parish council was going to pay it, what's our view about who can use it? I mean, do we want to?
Well, fair enough.
If we're not going to run out of the 15 gig,
No.
it doesn't matter. My feeling was if we're going to run out of the 15 gig, we needed to kind of reserve it.
If it's good to be, if the parish council is going to pay for it, shouldn't the village all come up with some idea of who may or may not use it? I'm not being funny, George.
There's only the parish council that wants to use it, as far as we know.
I think we should. I think we should set an example. You know,
Seriously.
this is about kind of bringing us into the next century, or this century before. You know, I think
The last century.
The last century. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what we should do is to say that we're going to put it in, and that people who are renting the premises or uses the premises. So, for example, if you've got somebody coming in, I know the postman who comes and opens up on a Tuesday or what have you, we should make it. The people at the coffee morning. I mean, they're not going to be downloading, you know, monster movies and what have you. But I think we should make it
Might be useful for you when you're
useful for you when you're there.
Yeah,
you know,
it would be.
you know, you could be getting information there. I think basically it should be a village facility, a village asset.
Yeah.
I doubt you're going to have people driving up into the car park and downloading stuff through it, and they can't get into that car park anyhow. I'd go with that and use it as a pilot and say,
Yeah,
you know,
so
I think
let's try it for 6 months and see
Yeah.
what
Try it
happens.
for a year.
I think that's right, George.
You know,
I would
if it's a year's
totally
contract.
agree.
But no, then see if we need to put a policy in place to actually limit its use.
yes.
I mean, my view was the opposite of what Colin was saying, that if either the village hall pay for it and they decide who uses it and look after it and do everything, or if the parish council's paying for it, the village hall can't say, yeah, but you can use it and you can't use it. That wasn't it.
Yeah, well, that's the point I was trying to make eventually, is it should be a free expression.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah.
I think it was a good scheme. It's fine. I mean,
and you know what? You then start laying the awareness of the groundwork that someone might want to run a social media user awareness course, or you know, we've got.
Well, like when they're doing their
place.
scans.
When they're doing the scans,
you know,
live examples.
Might not have it in time for that, but that would be
Where is the router going to go?
Well,
Wi-Fi
sorted
part
that.
of
Well,
it.
it's all going to be in here because this is where we have.
So
What
will
you
it
can
reach
do
the
on that
whole
is,
thing?
as we have in our
Repeat
house,
that.
right? So one of the problems in old houses, especially what those that have been sort of extended, where you've got steel beams, and in fact our kitchen, I didn't know this, my son told me, is what they call a Faraday cage. So it just kills the signal in there. So we've got a booster, we've got a repeater, and what you'd have here.
A dongle.
No, Bruce.
No, it's the router, and then we have effectively a range extender, and there are all sorts of BT. There's some
Like
very
when
good
you aerial
ones.
on your TV.
You can either run it through the main system, which is very effective, or BT have sort of, they have nets, they call them. They're sort of round things, and they go up on the roof, and they basically ping and repeat the signal, so you don't get dead spots.
Yeah, I suspect when we have got Wi-Fi here, we will look back in a year or three and say, how do we ever cope here without having it?
I agree with you. Yeah, well, that's right, but I think it should be made available.
All right, so are we happy to go with that?
Yes, I think. Yes, are you proposing it?
Yep.
I'll second it.
Good, that's good. If you can work with Steve
I will.
on it,
Yeah, I'll ask him
and
to.
obviously make sure that, I mean, we had the problem about it being in the steel box.
Oh.
and it didn't
Yeah,
work and
I
everything.
don't want that
I don't know
again.
if it's going, if it goes up into rafters, I think it's relatively safe from being nicked, because most people wouldn't even know it was up there.
Indeed.
We have
Now,
we know where the router is. The router.
There is this other issue about wanting to direct debit the bank, and I don't think we ever normally do that, do we?
Does the village hall have a bank account that can be direct debited?
Possibly, but we're
Well,
still
then
trying,
then-
after 6 months, still trying to get Steve on as a signatory.
Well, all I would say then, maybe what we try and do is we ask Steve or someone on the village or whatever to set it up, and we agree to reimburse them, and if necessary, we pay them the whole 12 months up front.
Well, because I was going to say, that was the only concern we had, was that if we were having to bill you every month for it, that was a big load on our booking clerk and treasurer, so I suggested half yearly or year.
I think we should pay 12 months ahead, about 12-month contract.
Okay, fine, that's fine, everyone will be happy with that, thank you.
Everyone's
I'll
agreed
follow
with
that
that.
up, and thank you very much.
While I'm sitting on village hall, can
Go
you
on.
just bring up what I found? 2002.
Before my time.
Yeah, well,
You've only you
yes, no, September. This is January. It's September I took it on. Parish Council paid for the new chairs, you know, the chairs that you have in there.
The plastic ones.
Yes.
Yeah.
We paid so that the VAT could be claimed back.
Right.
However,
At the village hall's request.
at the village hall's request, yes, and they gave us the money for it. But if we have it as claiming back VAT, the property has to belong to us.
Right.
So the village hall chairs are actually going to the parish.
Okay. That's fine.
It's fine.
They'll need all putting out tomorrow night, so if you want to come down and do it,
No.
feel free.
Paying for it, so they were
They're yours.
responsibility.
Yes, we have got
But it's
back
just-
rental.
Cool.
It was just interesting.
Well, like these
And-
all belong to the film club. So.
yeah, and it's just that, you know, well, that's what I
This
said. We
period.
claim the VAT back on it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it must be. Otherwise, it's a con, basically.
Yes,
it's a tax
exactly.
avoidance.
And when you had the floor done as well. Back in
You own the floor and the
2001.
chairs.
We're on the floor. Anytime.
I'd rather not broadcast the fact that we own chairs that cause chronic back pain.
No, we could be
Oh,
liable.
sorry.
Thank you for that.
Okay.
Give me a copy of it if you want to, then I can pass it on to our treasurer for our records if you
Yeah,
want.
okay.
Thank you.
Next thing then is consider changing the name of the green to the Memorial Garden, the area between War and Coronation Field. Now, obviously, as well as adjoining the War Memorial, the green now hosts a number of other memorials, as we said earlier, the Violet Markham Memorial, the Churchill Oak, the Airship Memorial, the 2018 Walnut Tree and Bench that you did, George, and other memorial benches like the one for Pam Sweatman.
And the stones opposite, the
Yeah.
one chair bench opposite.
Opposite.
In memory
Oh,
of
I
Yeah.
said other benches, yes.
Yes.
And all.
No stone.
Only stone.
Yeah.
Now, the name The Green has been used within the council and by the clerk. It's not known by the public,
No.
who are generally confused by it. It was also mentioned, I did notice, is also mentioned on the Violet Markham Memorial, which was actually laid by, quote, Friends of the Green. So The Green is a proper name there. On the other hand, the name Memorial Garden is actually used on the BT Whaley 40 years ago. It says it's on the eastern hedge of the Memorial Garden. And that was
No wonder
signed by
Ralph
the
couldn't
chairman of
find
the
it.
council. But it did also say between, and then said it went across the recreation field, so that didn't actually pick up on Coronation Field either. But anyway, so it has been used and
Interesting.
signed by the post office and the chairman.
Yeah.
Since then, the advent of the village green by Jubilee Fields registered other provisions
Yeah.
of common land has added further confusion, and we need to straighten the names out before we set out to brand our assets, if we do, as listed on the task list. So I'm very happy to propose that we change it to Memorial Garden. I've had other people, residents like my wife, say that's a splendid idea.
I'll second it then.
Roger
I'll third it.
Right. We get through a process.
Do we need
We
to
just did it.
consult
We did
You just did
We
it.
can do it.
the parish?
Signage is
I'm a
another.
bit surprised. I would have thought there would be some process through which we would have to hoop leap.
Why? Or how?
Well, usually
Because
We don't have to hold a referendum.
that's the only reason they usually
you know, I'm just thinking, I don't know.
Well, it's the post office that called it Memorial Garden, so
Yeah.
that solves that bit. And signed it.
And we had got unanimous support from the public at this session.
And
I suppose
we
it's
could-
only really if Ratty and Mo were getting posts and they'd have to
And we're gonna put a sign on.
with a post.
Oh, we-
If you put a sign up saying the green, they'd say that's ridiculous, it's the Memorial Garden. Except the clerk, who says it ought to be the green.
Yeah. No, if it can be done, if it can be done just by edict.
So
Does anyone have any concerns about it,
No.
other than Alan's little sniggle?
No, I'm perfectly happy. I think
I'm very happy
Yeah.
to accept from the floor the recommendation that came forward.
Okay.
My only thing to add to it, which isn't, I was supporting it, was it perhaps needs to be treated with a bit more respect if it's going to be a memorial garden and it's just the green, because sometimes it's in a bit of a mess even when it's just been cut, when it hasn't been picked up and there's the grass sticking out everywhere.
Yeah.
There's
You're
things like
right,
that.
but then again, you could say the same about the cemetery. Doesn't
Well,
get
you
picked
could,
up there
but-
either.
I think
No.
if we rebrand it,
The new
right,
mower.
and we set it, and we're saying, yeah, we should treat it appropriately.
Yeah, okay.
You know.
Can I just say, the original quote, when we used to put up the out for tender, was that the grass on that green should be collected.
Oh, really? So Alf could.
So we could go back.
But does he have a collect? He doesn't have a collector on the new
No,
does he?
not on the. You'd have to do it by hand, and then he's got all the grass to dispose of all the time, which is one reason why obviously he didn't. But it was at one time.
I think it clarifies the situation for both locals and for people visiting if we change it to a memorial garden.
And if we have other memorials, we know where to put them.
Yes.
Well, indeed, they have.
No, I mean,
Oh, the Memorial Garden, you mean?
Yes.
It becomes a church.
The stocks we're going to put in for Roger Goff.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
we
that's just
agree-
a personal view.
No, I
Yeah.
well, if
Wasn't a
I
condition
think
of
I'm
anything.
very
if
happy with
Yvonne
that.
and
If
Alf
it
can
can
actually
be.
keep it in better order, I'm nothing
Yeah.
Wasn't a
against
criticism
that.
of our
So are we having a sign?
equipment?
We will.
We will have a
We're not
sign.
agreeing that right now. That we've got to actually decide on our wording for all of them.
Yes,
We've got to
but
get
I
those.
understand that, but
But the aim is to have a sign.
Right.
They should all be. This was originally the concept of branding, that people should know that it is the
Yes.
Parish Council providing.
yes.
Just on that then, if we are going to go for Memorial Garden and have a sign, would that be good to tie in with this event we're doing with the airship thing, the memorial,
We
the
could,
chair,
yeah.
the
It's
Yes,
not
tree,
gonna
you're
the-
right.
happen quickly,
Put
is it?
them all in together.
Together.
You're
Yeah.
right. That one at least.
Opening the Memorial Garden.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, good
indeed.
idea.
Good. That's a way of actually making it a bit more than here is a new boulder.
Yeah.
You will be inviting Torment.
Roger Goff.
Right. Only if he comes on side, yeah.
Damien.
Yeah, good.
Right.
Annual return, this is the exciting bit now.
Yeah.
Right. Now, which document is that?
Right, this has to be done in the right order, and Yvonne is the master of ceremonies.
Right, first of all, the audit was done by our internal auditor. So if I may read out the report,
Yes, please.
Is that the document?
please.
Is that the document that was sent? You
No,
sent?
no, this is
Oh.
this is the internal. He has signed his bit of the annual report. The annual return, sorry, he has done that. And we have to consider what he says
Yes, it's common,
within.
yeah.
Like you do.
Dated the 10th of June, I can report the following. Overall, the Council has good controls in place, covering the key financial systems, with appropriate books of account being kept throughout the year. Expenditure payments were supported by invoices, approved and VAT properly applied. Expected income was fully received, properly recorded and promptly banked. The payroll was operated correctly and statutory deductions and returns made on time to HMRC. As in previous years, I can report that the accounts and other records of the Council are maintained to a very satisfactory level. In summary, this report again reflects very positively on the quality and standard work of the clerk to the Council.
That's good.
Well done.
Well done.
Moving swiftly
No,
on.
I think we should record our thanks to you.
Yes,
Sir.
yes.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true, yes.
Yeah.
We're very happy with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Well done.
Really
Right,
broad,
so let me
really-
go on to this now. I sent you out the sheet with the questions.
Yeah.
It looks like this.
Yes.
This is how it's.
Make you have to fill in.
So if I may go through with you so that you
And then you
can.
can tick them.
Yes. Right, so number one, put in place arrangements for effective financial management. We're going with
Have one?
yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
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 And
Sorry.
then the second bit is also off that form, what it means is all there, yes. So
Yes.
Yes.
Right, we maintained an adequate system of internal control.
Yes.
Yes.
We took all reasonable steps to assure ourselves that there were no factual or potential or non-compliance, etc.
Good indeed.
Yes.
We adapted ultravirus.
We provided proper opportunity during the year for the exercise of electors' rights. That's when I put the notice in the notice
Indeed you
board.
did.
Yes.
Anyone come?
No.
No.
We carried out an assessment of the risks facing this authority and took appropriate steps to manage those risks.
Including internal controls and that.
Yes.
Insurance cover. Yes.
We maintained throughout the year an adequate and effective system of internal audit.
Yes.
We've just heard that.
We took appropriate action on all matters raised in reports from internal and external.
The spelling
audit.
mistake, I take it, is yours now, is it? Because you retyped it.
Yes.
Yeah. And we consider whether any
Is
litigation.
that number 8?
Moving swiftly on.
Missing it.
7.
7. Go on.
We've just done the internal and external audit. Well, the
Yeah,
external
done
last
right,
year was
okay.
all right.
Yes, because the external one didn't have any contributory losses. We consider whether any litigation liabilities, etc.
Mhm.
We don't
Yes.
have any. So it's all yeses, which is what you need.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Right.
Does it?
Now, we have to say, approved at its meeting today, which is
11th of June.
Have you got to sign it?
Probably.
06.
I don't know which ones I signed, but Yvonne will tell me.
Signatured by signature.
Right, oh,
Signed by the chairman and clerk, so you have to sign it. There, please.
It's a local dialect, goes back several centuries. Have you been signatured, boy?
wait. You're right, boy.
So that bit has to be done first.
Right.
Right, so we've done that bit. Then the next bit, which is where I sent you the figures. which
Yes.
are taken
Yeah,
out
especially.
on
Yeah.
there.
Yes.
And I sent you the receipts and payments, so you
That's
could
right.
sort of see where I
Yep.
They all
got
add
my
up.
Yeah.
figures from. The only one that is sort of slightly is the staff costs, which of course include Alf's as
So,
well.
right,
So
that's-
that's why it was obviously more than mine. So you can see how that is. So if you're all happy.
They all add up.
I think
Yeah.
it's all add up. And
And they all and the basic figures there match the receipts and payments that
Yeah.
you sent us. Because I got the calculator out and checked them, so I can satisfy myself.
And that's just signed by you because I had to sign the other side before I presented it to you.
Yep. So let's just look here. Thank you for linking them in. Total borrowings nil. Yeah, you've got your pen. Disclosure note e-trust fund, we don't have any of them. So I'm signing here.
You see, and the internal auditor has a similar
yes,
thing
Yes.
which he
He's
has
done
to.
already.
Yes.
yes.
We took various things. So actually that's gone through very quickly because of your good prep, thank you. Good. And you sent us the reserves, but we don't actually have to.
And
we
it's
actually have
next.
down
Yeah, that's
further.
further down.
Okay, right. So we've got correspondence now, which you sent out, or you're telling us about anyway.
Yes, but actually the actual mediation service, I would quite like to read out. So if anybody that does listen to our recordings hears what it's about, because it's,
Yes,
it's
yeah,
like,
yes.
like an update.
Is it this in the BBC voice?
This is from Ian Redding, Development Director. I have very recently joined the Ashford Mediation Service as the Development Director and wanted to take this opportunity to both introduce myself to you and to acquaint you with the nature of the service that AMS currently provides for local residents across the Ashford Council area, in case you're not already familiar with the work that we do. We are a charity that helps people with neighbourhood, family and intergenerational disputes, offering mediation services in the local community with the help of trained volunteer mediators. These services provide a way of enabling people to talk about problems and reach solutions with our mediators listening, supporting and guiding them. There are quite a variety of problems that our service helps deal with, including many that will be very familiar to you and your parish councillors by the nature of issues, problems and complaints that they regularly are faced with in their councillor role. Noisy neighbours, children's behaviour, pets' behaviour, parking disputes, boundary disputes, stroke shared driveways, harassment, stroke abusive behaviour. As I'm sure you'll appreciate, early engagement of AMS when an issue arises is key to catching the problem in the bud and securing solutions that prevent problems deteriorating to damaging levels. Consequences of delay typically extend beyond the individuals involved, spreading across their extended families, their other neighbours and the wider local community. In the more extreme cases, they can turn from civil stroke community issues into criminal, an outcome that everyone wants to avoid. In any event, escalation can result in costly interventions being needed by councils and other public agencies, typically social services, health and well-being, but also into education and children's services and police, of course. If you would like further information on our mediation services, please let me know. If you feel it would be useful, I could meet with you or maybe with a group of your parish councillors to discuss the benefits in more detail. My contact details are below. Given the role of the parish councillors, it is inevitable that at some stage they will encounter residents facing up to such problems, so being in a position to guide them towards early resolution would be beneficial to all, both socially and economically. Our services are free of charge to residents of Ashford Borough, thanks to a grant that Ashford Borough Council provide to us. Inevitably, in these days of constant pressure on public sector finance, this doesn't cover all of our costs, and we are continually seeking other sources of financial support to enable us to meet the demand for our services. If your parish councillors are able to help us access such sources, that would be extremely useful, with the added benefit for them of knowing that this will be helping their residents / constituents. I look forward to hearing from you.
Has that letter gone out to all parish councils?
I would imagine so.
In the borough, probably.
Mm-hmm. Who's written it?
Ian Redding,
Ian Reddy.
Development Director.
No.
Who seems to be new.
Newly appointed.
Yeah.
Well, it's perfectly fair, you know, that it's a service that's there and some people might occasionally need it, and we can try and remember to point them to it if we hear of something.
I've used them in the past, in a previous job I had where I was using them for children trying to get back into school, for example, mediation between the child and the family and the school, or even within a family with like a teenager and a parent mediating between them. So it's been very useful. Yeah, I think they're a really good organisation.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like a worthwhile cause to support if we can. I can think of, you know, I mean, generally speaking, I don't think we have a high level of inter-neighbour disputes and what have you. I don't know about families, but in this village, but I can think of one or two areas where maybe if mediation had got involved 10 years ago or 5 years ago, we might have not had such a awful time of it over the last few years. But maybe it's worth just signalling that we like to support, because we never know in the future where we might want, you know, an example like George quoted, or something else. What can we afford? Because we can't spend it twice. What would be a reasonable sum?
Victim support, we've given £50. Others we gave Portugal £50, we gave carers £100. That's the sort of...
We're on 50 or 75 then, aren't we?
I was just about to say that, yeah.
50 sounds a bit sort of miserly.
75, I think.
75 to 100, I would say. 75, yeah.
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
75.
They don't like
I think it might be worthwhile, is there any information, or is there something that we can at some stage in the future include on our website? Is there a leaflet that we can have a PDF of? You know, how do we promote it?
Well, yes, because I think that
Because we're only signposting, aren't we? We're not providing.
Yeah.
No, we are signposting, but we'd also get it put in the monthly magazine.
Yeah.
That you know, there is a mediation service available.
And then contact Yvonne to find out where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I think that's important.
And I think we make the point we're pleased to be able to support
Yeah.
And
Parish Council.
It might be nice in the future to have some data on
Yeah.
how often it's used, or
well, it would get a note to say, you know, could you let us know on a quarterly basis, not names, but if with anybody in the Wittersham area has facilitated themselves with that service.
And it's something you put on, I don't know, notice board like that as well, wouldn't you?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it would be very useful.
You could do something in Outlook and do a little bit from there. Good.
Okay.
ICCM corporate membership, that's just the Institute of Cemetery and Crematorium Management, which Yvonne has availed herself of, training and what have you, to find out what we should be doing.
Should she have letters after her name? Should you know be
AICCM.
AICCM
Carved after her name.
You know.
I got a certificate.
Don't let them get
Well,
at you.
there you go. Use the qualifications.
Right, Wittersham School thanked us for our donation. As you can see, that was for the library. We sent them a little bit of money.
Yeah.
For them doing well and getting the letter from the Secretary of State. KCC came out with charging for non-household waste at the recycling centres from last week. Absolutely bonkers decision, I'm afraid.
It's going to
in my
cause.
view.
Totally agree.
It's going to create the problem we discussed earlier.
It's going to be. It's going to.
It's going to cost more than it
completely-
makes.
Of course, completely rebound on them. It's bad advice from officers, which councillors have been bullied into.
It's short
Very
term,
stupid.
isn't it?
Very stupid.
Is it?
I
Is
speak
it
from having
soil,
been in the industry.
rubble, and plasterboard, doesn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Tyres.
They usually don't
Our
even.
tyres. Well,
They don't usually even accept plasterboard. I've never quite understood why, but they don't like it.
Put gypsum in it.
Yeah, why? What's the problem?
Can't breathe it. That's a breathing apparatus. Everything. I've dismantled a shower in the past that had tiles on it. They would accept the tiles, they would accept the plasterboard, but they wouldn't accept them together.
Yeah.
So I had
And
to chip every tile off a piece
And
of
yet
plasterboard.
plasterers tip a bag of gypsum into
I know,
their mixing
and they
machine
shouldn't
to
do.
make their plaster.
Yeah, no. But anyway, there we are.
But if you put it at the bottom of a skip, who knows?
Put your household waste in the bottom of your dustbin.
Right.
Delinquent.
Tented and Social Hub looking for volunteers, as you see.
Mm.
We're still looking for him to come and talk to us since he bailed out of the annual meeting.
Yes, right.
Working party reports. Caretaker. We did have a meeting, but that was before last
Yes,
time, wasn't it?
no, well, just that we've paid for the ride on May now,
Yeah.
so that should be
Oh, and take the money out.
shortly. Yes, no, and the new gate wasn't terribly, the fastening wasn't terribly
Oh, right, okay.
workable. So I'll replace it with a spring, but that's, I
But
think,
the
it
spring
still
isn't
needs
springing.
attention.
That's not workable either.
It will be done.
But it's, yes.
Yeah.
Finance. Monthly transaction statement we got given.
Yeah.
Some.
To me.
Strange actually, the van insurance 363, they've just asked me for more money for Nula's little Honda Jazz.
Did you see the thing on the? Did you see the thing on the news outside today or yesterday? Who's the money expert?
Martin Lewis.
Martin Lewis. He said the absolute prime time to go for. He's done an algorithm with
Yeah.
millions of calculations. 21 days before your insurance is renewed.
You
That's
get the best
you
price.
get the best price
For what?
for
For
household or car insurance.
Anything, yeah.
Because then
The nearer
you're
you get
shorter
to
than
the
that, they
date,
think you're panicking, so they whack up the. You know,
Yeah.
That's when not to go for it.
no,
Yeah.
21 days is
It's
in
the
an ideal
optimum
world. That's when
time.
you go and get renewal quotes for your household or
quote.
your car insurance.
Yeah, I move it round. Yeah.
There we go.
I don't get that. Why?
Because the
You've still got
insurance
time to shop
industry
around.
have calculated that people who apply like a week beforehand or 3 days or 2 weeks beforehand are panicking, they've forgotten about it,
They're a risk
and therefore
as
they
well.
will quote, they will quote higher amounts.
Yeah.
People who do it like 3 or 4 months beforehand, they don't really want to get involved with that, and 21 days, they've done this research, is the optimal time to...
Because they know you've still got time to shop around
Shop
and go for a
around,
better deal,
yeah.
so they're going to give you a good deal in
Yeah.
the first place.
You do have a direct debit.
Yeah, I stupidly pay it by banking standing order.
Is everyone happy then with the
Yes.
transaction statement?
Yes.
Very good.
I
Yeah.
can sign that?
Yes.
Yes.
And the caretaker's subset of it, obviously,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
included. I haven't started running out yet.
And the reserves.
Oh yes, the
Which is the
reserves
next
that
one.
we
It's, if you remember when I gave it to you last time, I'd forgotten that we'd agreed
Yes.
£300
Yes.
for reservices.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
popped that in there.
You popped it in.
So,
Makes sense.
yes, so if you wouldn't mind
Mhm.
agreeing that one, that would be lovely.
Right, that's all done as well. We got the decision on the redundant barn, ewe and lamb. That's very interesting, it's been withdrawn. I take it that they were given the HEVO first, but whatever.
And
We've also
Cullen's
received-
Cottage.
come through.
Cottage, yeah.
Great result.
Mm.
Yeah.
4 years.
Perhaps that's why we're not accompanied
Good result.
tonight. Perhaps that's why we're not
It crossed
accompanied
my mind.
tonight.
It crossed my mind. But then others may know more than I.
Hmm.
But I have, as you, I think I mentioned, we don't have the officer's assessment sheet,
Which we should do,
asked for.
because technically we actually objected on this occasion,
Yeah.
if you recall, and they have
Twice.
told us that when they wouldn't consult us when they were going to overturn our decision or ignore our decision, that they always gave it to us in the officer's decision, which they now haven't done either.
I think they probably have been up against it because it was it was the fourth different planning officer.
I was going to say, it didn't, yes. Yeah, so
and the fourth different planning officer in charge, and as you probably realise, he had some volume of correspondence to deal with.
Indeed. Yeah. So
I kind of hesitate to say this, but I just kind of get a feeling that there seems to be a twinge of additional sensibility in the planning department.
maybe.
I just get the sense that things are being,
Maybe.
you know, slowly edging.
One thing
So
that
more
we do
sensible.
know, I mean, this has been true when I was in the PLA years ago, planning officers are exceptionally hard to get hold of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They
that's
are
true.
suffering
Yes.
without
Yeah.
never enough.
Recruitment, and they're not, they don't last.
They don't last, no.
The interesting point was that all new houses now in the country have to have an electric vehicle charging point.
Yeah.
Well, we have to have.
Well, yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Yes.
But presumably the ones, the 4 council houses being built, slipped under the
Obviously,
radar.
before
well,
we-
yes, it probably went.
Someone just drives up, plugs in and waits there.
They've got a camper
Murphy.
shed out the back.
It's a float with a
Can I,
generator.
can I just ask a question on Cullens
Please.
about what I think I remember one of the issues was sight lines from the
Yes.
access. How was that resolved in the end?
In the
They've been cut back significantly.
no,
Haven't they?
what it was that Tom engaged DHA, who looked at the criteria and comparison with other similar holiday accesses around the nation, and were able to show that it was perfectly safe.
But I also know, I'm sure I've noticed that if I was with your neighbours the other day, Cosnets, and we came out of there, and I looked at it because I knew that it had been, and it seems to me it has been cut back
Well, I've
significantly.
cut the
It
hedge
was cut back
Yeah.
before, yeah.
I've cut the
Yeah.
hedge back.
Looks good.
But the owner of the hedge just below has declined to cut it back. But it's possible now, when I speak to him, that he will say, well, now it's decided, I don't mind if you do cut it down.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there would be,
It was
to be
only
honest, there
trying
would be
to,
little point in objecting now.
yeah, it was only trying to stop you.
If you see what I mean. And now that it's decided, he may say,
Yeah.
perfectly happy. I don't know. I mean, that remains to be seen. It's, you know, it's,
Okay.
I mean, as, how to put it, no, getting the planning is one thing. That's when your problems really start, because then you've got to think about the building project.
Right.
Yeah. Thank heavens that's not the council's problem.
Okay. Do we have anything to say on highways?
The sign when you come into the village, when you leave Wittersham Road and then actually come onto the real Poplar Road, the branches have all
Yeah.
come over the
Yeah.
30 mile an hour sign coming into the village, so we need to kind of do our annual request to the whoever
they-
owns it.
Yes,
It's
Okay.
coming. The speed indicator device
Yeah.
on the left hand side.
you
Yeah.
do that.
Is it the branches in?
Yes.
No, I mean, is it the branches because it's quite hard to see, and I don't normally.
Well, that's the point, you can't see it.
No, I mean, it's a question of which branches it is. When you're
Oh,
quite a
You'll
long
see
way
when you look at
away,
it.
it's not so easy to see actually. Have you formed a view as to whether it's the branches in John McCleverty's old bungalow or if it's the new dormer just on
I
your
think
side of it?
I think it's
Because
about.
I've had a go at both of them in the past.
I would
I
say
was
it's
always
about
told to push off by
8 or 9 feet out of the village. As you come in, it's quite near it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, there's a bit along the top.
So it's probably
It's nearer,
something.
and then you get to that, and the more substantial bit has now grown. So would that be
There's
John
something
McCleverty?
oak in John McCleverty's.
I think that's probably
Yeah.
what it is. It looks like
It's
it.
difficult.
It's
to
definitely
see.
deciduous. What else was it in terms of highways? Actually, that's not. I just noticed that it's just over the border in Small High. There's a big pothole that's appeared outside of the parking area
Yeah,
of Small
that's
High
right.
Place.
That's right.
Ours.
A big one.
If you've seen it, pop it
Yeah.
on the side there.
Yeah, I just noticed it today because I was coming
Yeah.
that direction.
I think it's always best.
I suspect it's actually got worse
It has got worse.
in the last 24 hours.
Well, I want to 24 hours, I think.
I think as I raised before, I do have a concern about highways and their road closed signs. I mean, that was ridiculous the
That's
other
been
day.
like
That people have
all
been
round.
Oh, yes, I've been
people
going
have
round
been
the
driving
distance.
round and round. And also, when they did the one at Small High, down by the Lordings,
Yeah.
Yes.
when that was closed for several
Yes.
days,
Mm.
I was expecting to drive down there and see half a mile of trenching.
Yeah.
They'd put that much, they
Yeah.
dug a trench
Yeah.
that far across the road.
And
that
they
was it.
told all the
Yeah.
buses they could go through.
It was
they
very
couldn't
useful
the
that
first
somebody regarding going to down Robbleton there would put a note on Wittersham to say it was clear.
I know. I said it was clear because I drove through it twice. that
Well,
day.
I used it Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah,
All right,
stupid.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know.
will mention it.
Would you? Thank you.
Okay.
Siobhan.
public rights of way, anything from us?
Only that as of last Wednesday, the paths that they cut hadn't been cut.
Right.
I get a list of the ones that have been cut, so I've got
Someone
a
did
list for
some
last
house
year.
one, but I don't know if that was the neighbours.
Probably, yes.
Terrace
Yeah.
problem.
Open spaces, we haven't got Leslie here.
I
Well,
don't know.
Alan's
I
doing
don't
it.
know.
Well,
I'm conjoint.
Conjoined.
Unjoined.
Our space expert.
And I'm not
Subsection bus shelter.
anything on open spaces, Alan?
I don't think I have.
No, okay.
But thank you for asking.
Cemetery and churchyards, Sue.
No, it's Colin now.
Colin.
Yes. I noticed that.
Colin went to China and came back with cemeteries and churches.
After 8 years, I can't cope with all these changes.
No.
I did ask you whether you
Yeah.
objected, didn't mind. You didn't
Well,
come
there was
back,
no
so-
point in objecting, was there?
No, not really.
So is the cemetery and churchyard in good shape?
Yeah.
Well, it was yesterday when I looked at it.
Good.
Well,
Well,
actually,
indeed,
Anything
I
left
had
behind?
a few complaints.
actually, Judy mentioned the lower limbs of the tree that is.
Just before the gate.
Yes, it's in
Yes.
the churchyard, but the branches are hanging over the path.
Yes,
so
that's
when you
right.
Nip to the loo.
Yeah,
Oh, in the church?
Yes.
yeah.
So I said I'd go and look at it.
Yeah.
Well, I met Alf down there this morning, and he's going to take.
He's going to
some
take
of
it
the
out.
branches off.
When I went down yesterday, the right hand side going in, it had all been cut, the left hand side needed
Okay.
I
cutting.
was intrigued by the new
In
mowing
the church.
design, new mowing pattern
In the
in the
cemetery.
churchyard.
I have spoken to Robert.
Sort of these sort of random patches of unmown.
Yes, it's
Yes.
where the daffodils were. So he always leaves the daffodils in the next cut. He would take them out, but it's where the daffodils were. Because you have to leave them so that
By the leaves.
The goodness comes into the bottom.
You shouldn't
Yeah.
cut until at
And
least
then they
first
come
of
back
June.
out next
Yes,
year with
that's what he
flowers.
Well, that's where we are.
Okay.
yeah. So
Yeah,
next
At least,
time.
at least.
Right.
We're only just
Well,
after the first.
The animal service is on Sunday.
And
Yes,
they'll be able to graze the.
the cows. Yeah.
They don't
Okay.
like daffodils.
Right. CALC meeting, which was 2 weeks ago tomorrow. I think two. Alison Breeze used to be the chairman. You met her. She was also chairman of Kings North Parish Council and a previous chief officer in one of the boroughs. She stood down from both positions in May for personal reasons. I was asked if I'd consider taking on the CALC role, which is the one that John Rivers used to have 5-6 years ago. Conscious that it can raise the profile and the opportunities open to the village, as was proved very effectively during John Rivers' time. That's how we got the caretaker scheme. I agreed to take it on with a degree of reluctance, but anyway, I am now chairman of
Well done. Oh.
CALC, at least CALC Ashford, at least for a year, and then it will throw me out.
That's why, as I've said, we'll be lucky.
Well,
Yeah.
Thanks for taking that.
Well,
There
Thank you. There were two. The real nuisance is they've put the dates two weeks opposite ours this year, so there was no 2 weeks holiday between.
Oh,
It was only every other month. mind you.
oh.
but I'll have to get them moved back to near where our meetings are, which is where they used to be.
You mean to tell me you didn't sort that out before you accepted?
No, well, you're right, but I didn't think of it, but it's actually, they're set a year in advance. There were two interesting presentations at the main meeting. The new Acting Chief Inspector and Borough Commander for Ashford and Folkestone talked at length and very well. He'll be handing on to the permanent replacement Chief Inspector when that person is freed up, but we don't know when that'll be because he's on special duties related to Brexit. I say no more. We also had a presentation very quickly from Simon Jones. I'm trying to do it very quickly. He's Head of Highways, Transportation and Waste. He'd spoken at the Highways seminar last autumn. He said he had moved the previous Head of Drainage. Now, we're not sure if that was the young lady who visited Wittersham last year, and Yvonne and I and Alf saw her, but he did say, Head of Drainage, he has moved. He's unhappy about the way drainage was being dealt with, and he's trying to change the approach. I've been nagging Kent for about 2 or 3 years that they need to think of how to work with Alf, who could give them eyes and ears. Yvonne and I went to see, when the previous head was on maternity leave, we went to see the deputy who was doing the job and his deputy, and we wasted an hour really just talking to a brick wall. Absolutely hopeless. Well, Simon Jones wants to change things so that instead of having these routine cleanses once a year on the main roads where they just come along and each drain, but they don't do them, which we know. He says he wants to get an inspection first, find out which ones need it, do them properly, purge the lines, ignore the ones that are all right. Now, I think that's going to be very difficult because he won't get his inspections done, but I've said we can do that. And where parishes don't have caretakers, which is most of them, it's up to them, but they may very well find they can get a volunteer to do it. Because villages do have people who will do that sort of thing. Now, he's also promised, again, he did it last autumn, but he never came, despite me doing what he asked me to. He's promised again to visit Wittersham, and he did it in public, in front of everybody, to discuss how the caretaker scheme can help him and to see what's going on. I think drainage would be a good place to start. He knows drainage is a problem. He's also changed the approach to potholes, as I mentioned in the public session. It's just that they're not doing it yet, plainly. But they did put a white line across the patch, and they did patch it. And I've sent him the photograph. He can make of it what he will. The full minutes of the count meeting will come out to you from the clerk. That's really the headlines. Okay. Questions? No?
No, certainly not. You know,
the next meeting is the usual date. Items for information, the one that's here is the scam awareness presentation on the 2nd of July, which is after the market finishes at 11 o'clock.
In here?
In here, yes. Other information, Paul? Colin?
No.
Two.
No.
Alan?
I went to this meeting this morning, the Ashford Health and Wellbeing Reference Group meeting. I must say it was jolly interesting. Firstly, I met a few erstwhile colleagues. Dr. Rashid, who I knew from years in practice, gave a talk on networking in primary care where practices are working much more effectively together. For instance, just for example, if one of them's got a respiratory nurse, they share them out and they deal with missed appointments much more effectively and so on. I think the depressing side of the whole meeting was that I think we're probably a little bit on the edge of an abyss here because Wilma, my wife, was in practice in Ashford at Hayesbank for 20 years or so, and they had 8 partners, and 4 have retired, and they have been able to replace none of them. So they now have 18,000 patients with 4 doctors, 4 partners. They have 1 assistant, but they haven't been able to get anybody else. They have a lot of attached staff who do this and that and the other, but that's 4,500 patients per doctor, which is basically ludicrous. You know, average. I mean, we've been working in my day on 2.5. Sure. I mean, she's very resourceful and she's very intelligent and she's very dedicated. But crikey,
You can't do it.
cope, I will just never know, because it's an astonishing performance to be able to do that. They've managed to get around it to a certain extent by being very strict about home visiting. For instance, they in practice of 18,000, they only do about 12 home visits a week amongst all of them.
Oh,
Actually,
but
no.
collectively.
But you can understand
Yeah.
that they couldn't cope with it,
Sure.
otherwise. We tried to identify difficult areas. For instance, the group I was working with identified mental health issues for the young teenagers and early 20s. Ashford is a bit of a bleak area for that as well, not as bad as Medway. I think they had 2 suicides in Ashford, young men in the last month. Medway is worse, I'm told. We also identified one astonishing statistic, and sorry, this is just a statistic. In Ashford, they've identified that 67.1% of the adult population is overweight.
That's BMI 25, is it?
Yeah, 67.1%. And I mean, I suppose that's because of the social structure we have.
Yes.
We have hypermarkets and supermarkets, and it's terribly tempting, and we all buy more than we need, and we all eat more than we need, and then what happened? I don't know. Asthma, diabetes, all these things, and we go to the practice nurse, and they're all terribly kind and thorough and efficient and intelligent, and they make us feel better. And we enjoy it so much, we go back for a bit more, we take a tablet and think, well, I can eat more, I can go back to the supermarket and eat even more because I've got the tablet now. And it's a vicious circle, and you know, I mean, where do we go? And we're all becoming a bit health dependent, but the services seem to be getting thinner and thinner.
So
we are
people are
on
not
the
getting thinner and thinner.
Yes,
Other people are not.
Now you will know, all of you, I mean I go to Rye, but you will know, I think in Tenterton we're probably very well placed, and I suspect we were, certainly when I was in practice, and I suspect we still are. Although I think they have difficulty recruiting like every other practice in the country. And but certainly in Ashford I think they're really, really up against it there in Ashford. I mean that was what came across.
In Tenterton, at least you can get an appointment while you're still ill.
Yes.
Most places you better by the time the appointment.
Well, I was on the news yesterday. Brighton have lost 11 practices in 5 years.
It's, I mean,
Right there.
Medway is the practice
Incredible.
closed yesterday. It's on the news quite regularly. It's closing,
Mm.
and I mean the future is just. I just don't see the future as evolving in a way that we understand. It's going to be different. I don't know how, but it is going to be different.
The really worrying thing is that it has taken quite a long time for all these people to get to 60.
Yes.
And, you know, it has kind of been coming along, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's not
A
it should-
surprise.
I know that the pensions have suddenly meant people left a bit earlier than they expected to, which has brought it up.
Well, I mean, I went on till 63, which is actually most of my contemporaries give up at 60.
Yeah.
It's quite unusual, and I feel a bit guilty now about giving up at 63, if you see what I mean. But anyway,
Yes.
we're on.
And of course the other thing is that you retired before this pension thing hit the way it is now.
Indeed.
Where they're saying they just, I mean, it's the hospital doctors are getting hit there as well, because then they get paid overtime, but they can't do the overtime because they get charged more.
Well, they move
than
themselves into
they've got paid.
a new tax bracket.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, the general practitioners, I have to say it, I'm sorry, are overpaid because they can put so much into their pensions by the time they're 55 or 57. They decide, actually, I don't want to carry on.
Sure.
You know, I've probably said this before, when I was at medical school, we were taken aside and we were told, look, the only way the NHS will work is if you, 75% if you go into general practice and you work for 35 or 40 years, which is what we did. That doesn't happen now.
No. Well, obviously the females tend to go part-time after 5 years, don't they, as well?
It's
That's
you've
also
got to be
another
very
benefit.
cautious when you say that because it's terribly politically insensitive. You can't say it.
Yeah, but I
You
mean,
said it, not
It's a
me.
fact.
You see
I
what
know,
mean?
I know.
And it,
But
are we
trouble-
still alive?
Yeah, of course we are. But the trouble is that that's not a political opinion, that's a fact.
It is a sort of fact, but people will.
Well, it
it's
is a
bit-
real
it's,
fact.
it's a bit like
Parents,
things
some,
like
one parent, it might be the same sex family.
people will seize on that and say, well, in fact, you're being sexist and so on, and it's easy to misinterpret.
Yeah, but I mean, there you go again. And I'm not accusing you of anything, but to say it's sexist, to actually identify that something is about a female, like a mother is not sexist, because there aren't any male mothers. and there never
Yes,
will
but
be.
there are.
Well,
There are male parents who
I mean,
parents who care
it's an
for
interesting
the
one.
families.
I see
that's
it
not
from
the same.
a.
I'm talking
Just
about
like
having,
it's
I'm talking
paternity
about
leave.
having children.
Well, they don't
Actually
physically
having
have the children, but
Not-
they still
I
care
see
for
it from a slightly different angle in the sense that over the last 18 months I've done a number of pieces of work in the voluntary and charitable sector, paid work. One of the best examples I saw was in Islington, working with Age UK in Islington. They have an incredibly astute chief executive Andy Murphy, and he's very digital tech focused as well, using information very well. And his focus 99% has been on prevention. So if he can prevent people in the age, which is over 50s, actually getting into the hospital system or needing general practice, the more you can keep out of that, the pressure is reduced, and also the biggest problem in Islington is if old people go into hospital, you can't get rid of them. You can't just push them out the door, and it just completely bungs it up. In Kent, the thing I've probably come across more than anything else, we're working with 3 charities now, is the whole issue of mental health and isolation and loneliness. I mean, that's just this sort of thing that's below the radar, and slowly we're beginning to recognise that has a massive, impact. How you cope with that.
And for adolescents as well.
If you take, for example, the whole food thing, a great initiative I was privileged to see is over in the old coal mining fields in Aylsham, which is just a really strange part of Kent. You don't think of coal mine. And there's a charity there called Be Change, and one of the big initiatives they've got, and they've got this massive kitchen about half the size of this room, and they have family cooking. And actually it's as much therapeutic getting different generations talk to each other. And I've seen firsthand kids who won't eat that, don't eat tomato, don't eat vegetable. You can start giving them the responsibility of cooking it, and suddenly they eat it all.
Yeah.
It's incredible. I've just seen it firsthand. This big shift, and families that are completely dislocated, or dad's not there, he's had a pub, they can get them in there. And so I think that whilst I agree with you, I think I almost feel sometimes we're on the bridge of the Titanic, and we've seen Titanic 1, and we've now been strapped to the bridge of Titanic 2. There are some glimmers of it, and I think it's about getting the general public to recognise they have a responsibility and not just piling this reliance on general practice all the time, because we've got terribly lazy,
Yes.
in that.
Yes, and Sadio, who I was talking to, was saying that, I said, who does the clinical work, and who goes off to committees like this and working groups? And she says, well, it has to be done, because otherwise what happens, they pull the plug from some service and it ends up in general practice.
That's right.
That happens all the time.
You must also have seen, Alan, that the 80-20 rule, or even the 90-10 rule, applies very strongly, where you could have made out of 16,000 patients, you could have picked out a relatively short number, maybe 1,000, who had a not a bit disproportionate, but vastly disproportionate. Now, of course, it may be young children, it may be people over 90, but it will also be some people of 30 or 40 that are completely disproportionate to the others.
Well, there's that, of course, and we certainly have patients who contacted us every day of the week.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying.
And we were, in fact, bad at controlling it. Perhaps the profession has learnt a bit, but in those days. Having said that, if you think about it, when somebody contacts the doctor, they probably don't do it often, and the vast majority do it not very often, but there are so many patients now that all of them not doing it not very often still equates to massive workload. You see what I mean? It doesn't add up. I mean, 4,500 per doctor is just. I mean, you would not be able to get an appointment. It would be you wouldn't even begin to start to get an appointment.
Okay, so is everyone finished?
No.
No.
You will see we've all had a little documentation pack.
Yes.
Oh yes,
So can you please put them in your
folders.
Yes.
in your
Yes.
files,
Yes, thank you.
please? It's where we've reviewed
Yes.
things, so
Yes. Made up to date.
Very
you don't
efficient.
have to necessarily
Very
read
efficient,
it, just
yes.
updates
See?
your
I need
file.
to take some things out.
It's, yes, there's nothing addition, they're replacing.
Yeah.
Excuse me,
So
he's got Poplar Road in.
And my house has 2 names.
Yeah. He needs to be back in Wittersham.
It's very useful. Thank you for all your hard work on it.
yes, so that the
Yes.
contact list is updated.
Yes.
And your list is updated.
Yeah.
So it's just replacing,
Replacing.
please. So take out the old put in the loo,
Do
please.
Good.
immediately.
Anything else?
Motorbike. Oh, yes, sorry. Oh, no, I don't know, actually, no, when that's turned off.
Right.
Oh,
In that
I want to ask
case,
George a question.
No, don't. George might give me an
Meeting
answer.
closed.
Yeah.
Closed, is it?